Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of The Pipeline, a special broadcast for the Western Standard. I'm Western Standard publisher Derek Fildebrandt, joining you this evening as we cover the Federal Conservative Party of Canada's leadership election vote. Really looking forward to having everyone with us this evening. This is a really special broadcast. We're going to introduce the whole team here right off the bat. Joining me in studio today, as always, is Western Standard News editor Dave Naylor, who's at the ready. How you doing, Dave?
I'm ready to go.
Also joining us is Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford, someone who's been through many of these things. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks very much. Good afternoon.
Okay, and we've also got joining us from our parliamentary bureau in Ottawa, Western Standard Parliamentary Bureau Chief Matthew Horwood. How are you, Matthew?
I'm doing good. Good to be here.
Actually, we'll just begin right away with Matthew, maybe. Matthew, what's going on at the convention center there? I think the Shaw Convention Center in Ottawa.
So right now we have people streaming into the event. People are hanging out in the lobby getting refreshments, but the event is set to begin soon. So people are starting to take their seats and get prepared. It's going to be a little bit subdued because of the passing of the Queen. So there's going to be a lot more black attire. We're not going to have confetti cannons going off. And there's going to be a moment of silence beforehand. But yeah, we're just about to get underway and things are looking to heat up. As you can see the stage behind me here, within a couple hours, we will know who is the next leader of the Conservative Party.
What's the feeling in the room? What are people expecting?
The feeling in the room is a little bit of, I'd say people are waiting to see what's going to happen. They want to see the results. I've seen a lot of Pierre Poilievre signs out in the lobby, but I have not seen any for Jean Charest or Leslyn Lewis. So that gives you an idea of what the support levels are for the front runner at this point. But people are just ready to see who's going to be the leader, and we're hoping that we're not going to have the delays that we had back in 2021 when it took another full day to figure out who was the winner. Sorry, Dick, I think I lost you there.
Right, Derek. How to fill dead air over 8 hours. We finally just sort of shut it down for a couple hours, went for dinner, came back.
Yeah.
And, I will remind everybody that we were the first news organization in Canada to break the fact that who the new leader was. So that's, it was exciting that night. I don't know whether tonight is going to be as exciting or if it's going to be a coronation of Pierre Poilievre. But yeah, they have taken steps. Everything's digitized. They've been opening the ballots for more than a week, and when they all go into the system, it should take less than 15 minutes apparently. So yeah. Knock on fake plastic goes as planned.
Well, I think this is expected to be a little less of a nail biter. Whenever there's election coverage, the media will drag it out and pretend there's more drama than it is, because you got to keep your ratings up. You got to keep people glued, and we want people to be watching, but we're going to try and do our viewers a bit more of a service here and lay it out. I think we're all predicting that this is less of a leadership announcement than a Pierre Poilievre unveiling. Nigel,
that's where the smart money is on Pierre Poilievre, and I know that's a Western perspective. It may not be quite so strong in the East. We're going to see, but that's what we expect. The interesting thing, of course, is going to be if it isn't, then who is everybody's number two choice?
Well, I'm not sure we'll actually get to see many number two choices if it's a single ballot. We were talking about this just Wednesday on the pipeline.
Right.
I think Leslyn Lewis and maybe to an extent Roman Baber are number two choices of people, but that doesn't mean they'll come in second. It only works if it goes through a lot of ranked ballots and then they continue to move up in the points system.
As you said, that's unlikely.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna get us all on the record officially here. We've got what I've got here is the office pool on for the Calgary Bureau. The pool here. We've got employees and some folks who are no longer with us, but we're going to put everyone on the record because even former employees, if they win the pool, they still get the prize. That being said, since they're not here, if they lose, they can't really collect from them.
And I think it was just the one former employee who picked Jean Charest.
Yeah. So you know what? We'll just say former employee number 1 and former employee number 2. We don't want to embarrass them, but I think the one that's most off is a former person who was here who thought Jean Charest is going to win. Questionable. Highly questionable. But what we did is we went through ranking. So first off, if you don't pick the right winner, the rules from the office pool here, it's everyone has to buy this guy. The winner is, well, everyone buys a 6-pack for them. So it's a lot of beer. If Oktoberfest is coming up, so I'm really hoping to win here. You got to get all the rankings right. And if you get the rankings right, then it goes to predicting the first ballot winner's percentage. And we're doing percentage not in vote, but in points. And there's a big distinction. Actually, we'll talk about the point system in a bit here because it can be a bit convoluted. So we'll go through. I was the first put down. The default, I'm just going to say default in general because a lot of people pick the same order. I started with Pierre Poilievre first, Jean Charest second, Leslyn Lewis third. I had Patrick Brown in fourth, Roman Baber in fifth. Now, everyone's Patrick Brown picks have been taken out because he was disqualified, so we're just taking him out. That bumps up. Much to my embarrassment, I forgot to put Scott Aitchison on the list. So in general, I think the common consensus, the default is that he'll probably be the first to drop off if there was multiple ballots. Probably won't be, but that'd be Scott Aitchison in last place. And I had Pierre Poilievre at 60%. And see, I got his name right, Poilievre.
You're learning after all these months.
Yeah, it'll be hit and miss tonight. And I predicted that on March 9th. On March 9th, Dave predicted not actually the conventional. You had Pierre Poilievre in first, Leslyn Lewis in second, Charest in third, then Baber and Aitchison.
Can I change my vote?
Well, it will cost you another 6-pack to update your vote. That was the rules. You can always add more, but it costs you you have to ante up again.
But I think Charest is going to finish ahead of Lewis.
Not anymore. Like on paper, you have Lewis. That's what you're committed to, unless you want to add another 6-pack to the pot.
No, he couldn't pay me enough for a beer.
No. Okay. And you had Poilievre at 59%. The rules are even if he gets 59, still won't win because he didn't get the ranking right. We had Corey Morgan, who will also be joining us some point this evening. He went the conventional, Poilievre, then Charest, then Lewis, etc. at 64%. James Finkbeiner, you guys don't see him very much because he's on he's more in the back end of the business, but he's our vice president of operations. You had Poilievre first, Leslyn Lewis second, then Charest, then Baber, then Aitchison, but Poilievre winning on 70% on the first ballot. I think if it was done by raw votes, he'd be maybe 70%, but on the point system, which we're going to get into, I think that's probably too high. One reporter had the conventional ranking mostly, except Lewis in last place and Poilievre with only 50% on first ballot. I don't think so. Another reporter we had Jean Charest, first ballot win with 53%. Go home, you're drunk. Not happening. New reporter with us. Let's just studio here. Let's generally have the camera on the whole studio, not just me. Everyone wants to see the studio, not just me. Young new reporter with us, Jonathan Bradley. Now his vote came in later because he's a newer reporter, so he got to put his votes down here. His was only on July 15th. We all bet, you and I bet on March 9th. But Jonathan Bradley had Pierre Poilievre in first, but on first ballot with only 47% of the vote. He has since attempted to recant, but he's on paper here, and this is what counts when it comes to the beer money. So Jonathan has Poilievre winning, coming in first, but only 47% on first ballot, followed by the conventional. Nigel, you had well, somewhat unconventional. You had Polyev winning 56% on first ballot, but second place would be Leslie Lewis, followed by Charest.
Well, Leslie Lewis has got a huge following. Let's not kid ourselves. It's not usually a compliment to be called everybody's second choice, but the way these ranked ballots work, it can be very helpful. It would not surprise me to see Leslie Lewis coming in second place. It would surprise me a lot if it was anybody other than Pierre Poilievre, however.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're on the record, and we're going to be held accountable tonight.
We have our own ranked ballot system.
Yeah.
There it is.
You know, based on this, actually, I'm feeling pretty good. I think Corey is actually my closest rival to beat me based on the votes. You can change your votes, but it costs you another six-pack to update the pot.
I am not changing. Rock steady.
Rock steady?
You bet.
So Leslie Lewis in second.
Yes.
Okay. Who knows? Actually, she might get second in votes, but again, not in points, because last time, according to some, she was either second or possibly first in votes, but because her votes were concentrated in the West, she didn't make the final ballot. She actually could have won because she had tremendous. She actually won the 4 Western provinces, I believe. Really strong in Alberta, really strong in Saskatchewan, but it was just too much. It was a lot of votes, but concentrated and under the point system, it diluted it.
And that's the only reason why I have Mr. Poilievre down at 54% or 59 or whatever it was I put there, because that point system.
You got him on 56.
56, right. So
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
As
go
you
ahead.
know most about it, why don't you explain the point system so people
Well, yeah.
kind of know what we're talking
Let's
about.
get to this point system. It's a bit convoluted, but not as convoluted as people think. So there's 330 some constituencies in the country?
338, actually.
338. So that means, I suppose, that means there are 33,800 points available. So the way this works is there are 338 constituencies in the country. And each constituency has 100 points, and that's based on the percentage in each constituency. So if in, let's say, Calgary Nose Hill, where Michelle Rempel is the MP here, Pierre Poilievre has 55% of the vote, well, then he gets 55 points. And then Jean Charest has 15% of the vote, he gets 15 points. Scott Aitchison has 2% of the vote, 2 points, etc. And it's a point system. That means that each constituency is effectively weighted equally across the country, regardless of how many voters are in it. So Calgary Nose Hill that we're talking about, this is a Calgary constituency with a pretty organized MP. It's going to have several thousand members in it. It's going to have a lot of people in it voting. So let's say for sake of math, it's got 4,000 Conservative members voting. It still only counts for 100 points. And then we'll go to, let's say the Labrador constituency. It might have 70 people voting in. But actually, in its case, they have modified the rules. If you don't have 100 people voting, then it actually only, each vote counts as 1 percentage point. So if you have a constituency with 150 people voting in it, each vote counts almost as a percentage point. If you had, say, 70, then it comes down a little bit. It's a minor penalty to come in. And that goes back to kind of some of the founding bargains that created the Conservative Party of Canada out of the Canadian Alliance and the Reform Party.
Right.
Nigel, was that a fair summation of how this system works?
Well, I think you were going to just go on and say that therefore you've got some very small riding associations can still push the final vote towards somebody who's got many more votes from the general membership.
Production, I'm told that the stream has started for the convention. I think we're, maybe let's go to the floor of the convention and see what's happening here. Well, we're going to need audio for that to work. Okay, production, you're going to have to let us know. I think they're singing "O Canada" or "God Save the Queen." Looks like
maybe "God Save the King."
A "God Save the King."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Still not used to that.
It'll take a while.
Production, we're going to need sound coming from that convention. Otherwise, there's not much happening there. Okay, well, We're going to keep.
Thank you. Please remain standing. And I would like to.
I can hear nothing in my
invite,
ears.
Rosemary Siemens and Eli Bennett. They've been playing music for us earlier. They are going to do an instrumental rendition of God Save the King.
Vous levez si possible pour une version instrumentale de l'hymne royal Dieu protège le roi par Rosemary Siemens et Eli Bennett.
What a royal send-off to Her Majesty. That was fantastic. The Queen was named Queen on February 6, 1952. I was born July 1st, 1952. And so I've been thrilled that we've celebrated all our special anniversaries together. And I was so sad to hear the news, but what a wonderful, wonderful Queen she has been to us. Please remain standing and join our former Member of Parliament and the CPC Leadership Election Organizing Committee that Valerie and I both sat on, a LEOC member, former MP Nellie Shin, for the singing of O Canada.
Veuillez rester debout et accueillir Nelly Sheen, députée de 2019 à 2021 et membre du comité organisateur de l'élection du chef pour interpréter notre hymne national.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patron love in all of us command. Qu'à ton bras c'est porter le pays, il sait porter la gloire. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Merci Nelly, c'était magnifique.
She wouldn't tell you this, but Nellie played the music in the background for her to sing. So another hand for Nellie.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Good evening, fellow Conservatives, and good evening, fellow Canadians. Bonjour, chers amis. This is a great day, and it's been a busy time. Yes, please be seated. On behalf of our Conservative family, we also offer our heartfelt thoughts and prayers to the victims and their families of last weekend's horrific events. We want to let people of Saskatchewan know that we are thinking about you. Thank you so much. We also wish to acknowledge that we are gathered here in Ottawa, built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. Thank you. We're pleased to be joined by our party's vice president and the vice chair of LEOC, Valerie Asselin, my fellow co-chair, and our member. Yes, let's give her a hand.
Turn it off. All right. So that was kind of introduction, opening ceremonies. Actually, joining us now is Western Standard senior columnist Corey Morgan. Glad to have you with us.
Yes, glad to be in. It's an
improvement over the night of the haunted desks and whatnot that we had during the last time we did this when Aaron O'Toole won.
Well, so far, but the night's young. So, I mean, we thought we were going to be done in a couple hours the last time we had a Conservative race too, didn't we?
You made your career on optimism, haven't you,
Oh,
Corey?
no.
Oh boy, I'm not a
Sometimes I like-
Catholic, but I'm going to pray to God that we
Sometimes I
never
like to
go
be
through that
wrong,
again.
so we'll celebrating a timely release of the results tonight.
You know, that was one of the more beautiful renditions of God Save the Queen that I've heard in the last 10 years.
It was extremely well
That was
done.
extremely. I'll be very interested to see.
I think
what
they butchered "O Canada," not just because they did Justin Trudeau's version of the lyrics, I think they butchered "O Canada" on it, but the "God Save the Queen" was wonderful.
You know, I will be very interested to see what the government of Canada or the other parties do in terms of a tribute to Her Majesty. But this certainly was set exactly the right tone to get the meeting off to the right start.
Absolutely. Wonderful tribute to the Queen. We also had up there, I don't know who the other lady is speaking in French, but I know who Deborah Gray is. Deborah Gray, sometimes called the Iron Lady of the West, was the first Reform MP ever elected in a by-election. And
that's right, 1987, I believe it was.
I think
It was Beaver River. Yeah.
Beaver River.
Yeah.
Was it 87? It was right after the 84, maybe even before 87, because she ran in the 1984 election for Reform, did not win. No one for Reform won because the party was about a year or maybe less old then. She didn't win that one, but then the MP died even before taking his oath when he was reelected, triggering a by-election right after, which Deborah Gray won, and that was the first reformer ever elected. And she was kind of the Reform Party's beachhead for the West in Ottawa all the way until '93.
You know, she had quite a tough time at first. They didn't make room for her. The other parties just treated her as another Western person of probably somebody who today we would say they had unacceptable views.
Treated her very much as just some kind of rube. The PC party at the time did not see it as maybe we're doing something wrong in the West and we should readjust. They just utterly ignored her, treated her like dirt, and we know how that ended for the PCs in '93.
You bet.
Okay. Just so you know, Corey, before you joined us in here, we went through. We've got everyone on the record written. You placed your bets on the same day as me, March 9th. You had Pierre Poilievre. See, I'm continuing to get it right.
Yeah.
First, you actually had the conventional ranking, same as me, but you had him with first ballot on 64%.
I was looking high at that time, yeah.
I've got him at 60. I actually think you're my greatest threat to beating me in this. I still think I'm going to be right with 60, but I can see it getting 64. But as we were talking about before you joined us here, I think he's going to beat his percentage in votes. His percentage of the vote, I think, could extend towards 70% plus. But points, Charest is going to be stronger point-wise in Quebec. And probably in the Atlantic provinces as well. So I think, that's going to penalize him. What do you think? Do you think Poilievre is going to underperform in points relative to his vote?
It won't be as strong, but I think I still think he's going to have a very definitive win, even with the weighted system and with the point system. And we saw some exciting rallies on every part of the country. Wherever he went, he was a rock star. It didn't matter whether it was Toronto or the Maritimes or BC or Alberta. I mean, he certainly got many more members out here than he does out there, but he campaigned wisely. They spread their support around.
The interesting thing, Corey, is that we often say that when he was here in Calgary back in April, there were 5,000 people down at Spruce Meadows. Those were the ones that were in the room. There were 3,000 orbiting in their cars trying to find a parking space.
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of numbers that he's got. But I still say that you two are both going to be coming to my desk asking for a beer at the end of the
Well, okay, so the thing is, Nigel had Poilievre winning 56% of first ballot, but you had Leslyn Lewis coming in second. The thing is, I think a lot of people who voted for Leslyn Lewis last time, because she was probably the only strong, actually conservative candidate. Aaron O'Toole was lying about it the whole time, as is now clearly evident and why they're having a race at this moment. But I think a lot of people who voted for her, a good chunk of them, I think, are going to go to Poilievre because they saw her as the only viable conservative last time. I think she's probably not going to do as strongly as last time. But
we shall see.
We'll see. We'll see. Really, I guess the race here is how big is Poilievre's first ballot going to be? Everyone agrees it's going to be first ballot. I've been wrong before, but I think we all at least are expecting a first ballot. The real question is the race for second place and how strong is that second?
Well, how strong is that second? And also, if Mr. Charest is second, what does that mean? If Leslyn Lewis is second, what does that mean? I cannot imagine how Mr. Charest would stay on in in Conservative politics if he loses this, but perhaps he will. If he does, where does he serve and how does he serve? Same question, of course, for Leslie Lewis.
Well, Jean Charest is not currently an MP, so it's less awkward. He's not expected to be there. There's this weird thing in Canadian politics where we say, well, even if you lose, you need to run anyway and serve under the next leader. I actually think that's pretty misguided. In all honesty, the new leader probably doesn't want them around because they're, rival centers of power. It's a cause of dissent and dissension in the caucus. I would bet that if Jean Charest won, he wouldn't want Pierre Poilievre there. And
Mr. O'Toole didn't, did he?
Pardon?
Mr. O'Toole did not.
No. Mr. O'Toole also did not want Peter MacKay, even though ideologically they were virtually the exact same. He had no choice with Leslie Lewis because she was elected an MP anyway, but he demoted her right to the backbenches. He refused to put her in the shadow cabinet, even in a minor shadow cabinet position, put her right into the backbenches. Now, I think that some of that was also just her refusal to disclose her vaccination status, which I suppose Mr. O'Toole didn't think was appropriate. But again, another reason he's not there today.
Right, exactly.
Corey, do you think Charest sticks around, runs as an MP?
No, and kind of like you said, I wouldn't hold it against him anyways. I mean, he's put in his time. This is his reach. He's been a premier. To suddenly go back to member of parliament, not that it's a dishonorable trait or anything, but at his point in life, this is his last kick at a leadership.
He's been a premier. He's been a cabinet minister.
Yeah.
He's been the deputy prime minister for like a month.
Just going to move on to a statesman status, or many things he could still potentially do, but I can't see him sitting in the caucus. And as I said, I don't think Poilievre would really want him back there. Especially, you got to watch it if you've got an up-and-comer. You think of even going way back, when Turner won, and he had Chrétien still nipping on his heels. And that led to the Liberals ripping themselves up from within because Chrétien was constantly working to take out Turner. So you want those rivals. You want to appeal to that segment of the party, but you also don't want that rival sitting there visibly next to you the whole time.
Yeah, there are certain things that could be done with Mr. Charest. Maybe it's a little premature for us to be talking about it, but if he does not win, the next leader of the Conservative Party, if he becomes Prime Minister, would likely want a man with Mr. Charest's linguistic abilities and his experience. And frankly, he's well-liked, very gracious, a gentlemanly sort. Well, make a wonderful ambassador somewhere.
Oh, certainly. He'd be an asset in a number of ways. Even if, were I a member, I don't think he'd fix my ideology to the point where I would vote, for Charest, but I still respect him as the political participant he is. He has a lot to offer.
Absolutely.
Maybe we're going to just tune back in for a moment to the Conservative convention, something being said from the floor. So let's take it over there, Jonathan.
Peace.
Merci, Léona, pour tes beaux mots. Sa Majesté la Reine Élisabeth II nous a quittés. Nous souhaitons lui rendre hommage pour son dévouement et à son service remarquable tout au long de sa vie envers les peuples du Canada, du Royaume-Uni, du Commonwealth, du reste du monde. Sa Majesté nous laisse un incroyable héritage qui demeurera dans notre mémoire collective, non ordinaire pour toutes les femmes du monde.
All right, let's turn off that. Okay, well, as most Western Standard readers and viewers will know, we don't speak French. Nigel, do you speak French, actually? You worked in Ottawa.
Oh, not very well. They tried to teach me, but I'm afraid I'm not very good at it.
Can you say God Save the Queen in French?
Sauver la reine. Yeah, oui. No.
Lange lebe die Königin, I can say in German.
That's a terrible thing to admit. Anyway.
Okay. Well, I have no idea what she was talking. I heard Majesté and stuff, so they might still be talking about the Queen. Okay. God save the Queen, but we're mostly here today for the Conservative leadership. So, Charest, yeah, I don't think any of us really expect him to be hanging around after. Leslie Lewis, though, I think is different. there's not been anywhere near the vitriol between Lewis and Polyev. In fact, if there's been any harsh words in the debates and whatnot between Lewis and Polyev, it's been her accusing Polyev of kind of jumping on the freedom bandwagon late when it became politically convenient. Her saying that, she stood with people against mandates and forced vaccination and all these things before it was cool. I think that's the extent of what we've seen for any conflict between those two camps.
Well, she did do that. No question about it. On the other hand, Mr. Polyev has been very consistent on freedom since before Ms. Lewis was elected as a member of parliament.
But anyway, he did not spend a ton of time talking before the Freedom Convoy. It was somewhat subdued. It wasn't kind of front of mind for what he'd be speaking about. He was the finance critic, to be fair, not the health critic or anything. But he wasn't talking about mandates that much until the Freedom Convoy came, and that blew up O'Toole's leadership.
But then he really did talk about it.
Yes.
He's been a freedom man since, years and years ago when I was in Ottawa. So it just wasn't an issue at that time. No, I think it's a reasonable thing for her to say. If I were running a campaign, I'd say the same thing. But
yeah,
I think Mr. Polyev is going to weather that criticism very easily.
Yeah, and what would you expect? What do you expect of her future if Polyev wins? Do you think she gets kind of a front row seat and comes out of the backbenches, or does he want to keep her lower profile? I mean, she's a social conservative. She's pro-life. That is considered among polite society in Ottawa to be extremely taboo now.
Yes.
I think Polyev is probably going to make a good head-to-head against Trudeau. But there's a dark part of me that would have really just loved to see a debate between Leslie Lewis and Justin Trudeau, and him call her a racist, misogynist, white supremacist.
Yes, that would have been a fun debate. I don't think it's going to happen. What I wouldn't want to second guess what Mr. Polyev is going to do with her, but she can't be ignored. There are just too many people who have put too much energy into supporting her. They will be expecting that she will be respected and that she will be listened to. Mm-hmm. And by extension, that they will be respected and that they will be listened to. And if Mr. Polyev can do that, if he can at least ensure that the social conservatives, as they have become known, I don't think that's a fair appellation, but anyway, whatever it is, if people who think that way, call me one too, expect to be listened to, expect to be heard, and not told that our opinions are unacceptable, that we're outside the game. So she needs to have an important role.
Well, I think there was a strong expectation there last time. She arguably by popular vote won the last Conservative leadership. Didn't win because of the point system, and her Western votes didn't count as much. There was a strong expectation she was going to be on the front bench. She was going to be a real member of the team. But O'Toole did not. He put her straight to the back bench, told her to shut up. You saw very little of a role for her in that caucus, at least as granted by the leader. Corey, what do you expect to see of Lewis, assuming that Polyev takes tonight?
Strategically, I mean, for consolidation of his leadership, he's got to give her a prominent role and treat her with respect. I think people with views that I guess, whatever way we might want to label them, socially conservative, are pragmatic enough to know too that, look, abortion's not on the table. Gay marriage is not on the table. It's same-sex marriage isn't up anymore. They're not there, even if they have personal issues with that. They know the party's not going to embrace those stances. But that portion of the party, if they could be respected and treated well and allowed to carry on their lives, without participating in those things, that keeps the party unified and doesn't have that element, ticked off with.
Corey, there's even an upside there that's available to whoever wins the leadership race. And that is that you have a number of people in caucus right now who are very reflective of the current societal consensus. You have somebody like Ms. Rempel there, who has made her views very clear. You have somebody like Melissa Lantsman, who's a rising star in the Conservative Party. She would not describe herself as a social conservative in any way. So you have that side of the party represented on the front bench, but you could also have that social conservative side represented on the front bench. Big tent. Is
Exactly.
there something wrong with a big tent?
No, and it makes it all the more important to have Leslin up there,
Absolutely.
and not. And we're not talking tokenism. I'm not even talking
No,
the race
no,
part.
no,
I'm talking the socially conservative part.
Absolutely.
In that, it's a respected presence. It's a part of your bench. It's not someone there just to toss a bone to that segment of the party.
Mhm.
I mean, to realize that she's bringing a view of a segment of the party that needs respect.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, Roman Baber has, okay, for someone exiled, he was exiled from the Ontario PC caucus for opposing Doug Ford's repeated constant lockdowns. And he has taken a very, there's a few ways you can go about, most people just leave politics. Once you're out of your caucus, you're pretty done. Sometimes they cross the floor. They go to another party. That was clearly not what he wanted to do. He sat as an independent, but he's taken a very unconventional way. Sorry, we got a little background noise from outside our studio here, but his way back into political graces was to say, screw being a provincial member of parliament, I'm running for prime minister. Runs for the conservative leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. I don't think he really stands any chance of winning here tonight. I don't think they have any expectation of winning, but he does appear to, he has gained some traction. I think a lot of Poilievre voters really like him. I think they're going to mark him second. Those second choices, I don't think are going to get counted because Poilievre will just win on first ballot. No matter what, he'll be on the last ballot. But Baber has really made a name for himself as kind of the most strident kind of anti-lockdown, anti-mandate candidate. What do you think?
Well,
What do you think
of all,
the future holds for him here?
Oh, look, I think the future looks good for him. He's a decent man. He's not a flake. And this is one of the ways you get yourself forward. You know you're not going to win, but you do a good campaign. You play fair. You don't offend anybody, and at the end of the day, you see how you do. And now you are a known name. It's worth putting you in cabinet to do something, or into the shadow cabinet.
Definitely. I mean, from a political perspective, it was a very smart strategy.
Very
as
smart.
Derek was saying, when you've kind of gone on the outs of a provincial caucus, it can be the end of a career. But he's actually rebranded himself into a federal politician. And as Nigel said, too, once people got to see him, because I didn't know much about him. And
So how old are you?
interviewed,
13, okay.
he's quite rational. He's not a flake, as you said, and he could become a very solid part of the party. And what better way to let them know, you're not some unknown person pursuing a nomination somewhere now. You've been a leadership candidate who was never a contender for the win, but you got some profile, and people realize that you're worth respecting. So a very good move on his part.
Okay, well, we're going to go to Matthew Horwood, our parliamentary bureau chief in Ottawa right now. He's standing by with Wyatt Sharp, apparently a aspiring young reporter. Matthew, can you hear us? Okay, Matthew apparently cannot hear us.
Hello, everybody. I have got Wyatt Sharp here. Wyatt is a very young reporter. How young are you, Wyatt?
13.
13 years old. So Wyatt tends to be with a lot of kids. They want to be nowadays playing Fortnite, learning TikTok dances. What made you want to get into politics at such a young age?
I think it's the awareness of some of the issues that are being faced by people on a day-to-day basis. I think being in journalism allows you to tell those stories for people. People benefit from it. In my case, with my show, The Wyatt Sharp Show, I've been able to interview lots of different people. So I interviewed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau back in September during the election campaign. I've interviewed NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, several premiers as well from across the country, and lots of international folks too. I've interviewed the former Prime Minister of Finland. So lots of different people. I do a show every Monday to Friday, and I think, again, it's just being able to tell some of those stories that are quite relevant in the lives of everyday folks.
Absolutely. So tell me, Wyatt, how did you get into journalism, and how did you manage to work your way up to interviewing these big-name politicians? What was that like?
Again, I think it was just telling those stories, being able to tell those stories, I think is a beneficial thing. And in journalism specifically, being able to chat with people, interview people that are relevant to the everyday news cycle and can speak on issues that people care about.
Now, when you interview like Jagmeet Singh or Justin Trudeau, do you have a particular, let's say, style or line of questions that you try to get at them? Are certain issues that you really want to focus on?
I think it's the issues that are important to everyday folks. So climate change, the environment, the rising cost of living. We have lots of issues as well with, again, the cost of living, but many other issues like airport delays have been something that people have been talking about recently, obviously. And then there's also interviews that I do that are on like very relevant topics to kind of a one-day issue. So say someone announces their run for whichever position, a federal position, provincial position, whatever the case may be, I'll request an interview with them. So it's kind of, I joke sometimes I'm my own chase producer and anchor at the same time, so kind of doing everything all at once, and again, interviewing those people that are relevant to the everyday issues.
Yeah, you certainly seem to do it all. What are your thoughts on the Conservative leadership race and how it's been so far, and do you have any predictions on who might come out as the winner?
I think one thing that a lot of people can kind of come to a consensus is that Pierre Poilievre, who many people describe as the front runner in this race, has not been doing very many media interviews. Many people say that he's doing that on purpose to kind of avoid accountability or avoid the public. So I mean, though there are those criticisms, I think definitely if you want to be the Prime Minister, you definitely need to make yourself available to Canadians, which obviously Mr. Poilievre has not done as well as some of the other candidates have done. I think when looking at the leadership of the Conservative Party, he's obviously the establishment favorite as to, you know, he has the most caucus endorsements. He has a lot of endorsements from just everyday folks too, who are members of the Conservative Party. So lots of different people that are definitely relevant. But I mean, Jean Charest has lots of endorsements, as do all of the other candidates. So I think it's a matter of looking at all of them and ultimately seeing who has the most support, which we'll find out later tonight.
For sure. Do you have any thoughts on when the next election might happen, how Justin Trudeau versus Pierre Poilievre lineup might look like? Do you think Trudeau would have a good shot at getting re-election, or do you think Pierre Poilievre would have it in the bag?
I think it kind of depends. I mean, you can't really give a definitive answer to that until you see, you know, Pierre Poilievre is elected as the party, and then, you know, which type of policy he puts forward. Many people are questioning whether or not he's going to have to pivot, whether or not he's going to flip-flop. I've actually had a lot of people tell me that they don't believe he can pivot because he hasn't really, like, he can't right now be pinpointed to a certain spot on the political spectrum. So it would be hard for his critics to say, well, he pivot or he flip-flop, like some people said about Aaron O'Toole, because again, Pierre doesn't really fit on the political spectrum necessarily. So lots of interesting things. And I mean, I think in an election campaign, we'll just have to wait and see.
For sure. And I got one more question for you here, Wyatt. What are your thoughts on defunding the CBC, which Pierre Poilievre has talked about? Do you think that that is a good move? Do you think it's, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, Canada's public broadcasters are very important, company and corporation. I mean, it's something that brings the news to everyday Canadians. I think doing it is something that might seem good as political strategy. I think it ultimately needs to be talked about a little bit more rather than just saying we're going to defund it. I think, again, it's the public broadcaster. It's very important. And without it, many Canadians may not get the news in the same way they currently do. So lots of conversations to be had, and I'm sure people will have those conversations in the days and weeks to come.
Absolutely. And just to quickly wrap up, where can we follow you online?
Just YouTube, The Wyatt Sharp Show. So if people want to go and check it out, I do interviews with people from all political parties on an everyday basis, so they can check that out.
There you go, Wyatt Sharp, ladies and gentlemen. Back to you in Calgary.
Sharp by name, sharp by nature. I was with him right up until he said he didn't want to defend the
Yeah, he was going so
Oh,
strong.
the wheels came off
He's
right
sharp
there.
at his age because he sees a potential career trajectory.
Look, there's one thing that he did say that I thought, boy, oh boy, how did he get that smart that young? He said that he enjoyed interviewing and talking about what? The issues. Who talks about the issues in the mainstream press anymore? It's all about the process. It's all about who's fighting with who. Trying to get an honest discussion going about.
Clearly, we're
what's
not talking
actually-
about who's fighting with who tonight.
No, my word. Anyway, good for him. I think that was a worthwhile couple of minutes.
Well,
Wish him well.
if we can get him to readjust his thinking on the CBC, maybe one day when he's been through a bit more of school, maybe he'll have a job here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep an eye on him.
Well, right now, maybe we'll put it up in silent on the side if we can, but Aaron O'Toole is saying something. You know, we've got him on mute. I can't hear him, but Aaron O'Toole is giving his pre-recorded video, I imagine talking about how great a leader he was, probably thanking members for having had the time to serve, the privilege of serving. But obviously, this is happening. This leadership race that's going to be decided in just a little over an hour is happening because he was pushed out by his caucus, I think, as his leadership just totally imploded as the Freedom Convoy arrived in Ottawa. Corey, how do you, what legacy, if any, do you think Erin O'Toole is going to have in the pantheon of Conservative leaders?
He'll be forgotten. He came and went. He didn't make much of a mark. He was status quo. If anything, he taught a lot of us, don't talk right and act left, because it just infuriates your members, and you paid the price for it. I mean, now he's not even there in person to give his farewell speech. So I understand. I mean, if he's uncomfortable as giving a speech at your ex-wife's next wedding or something, but all the same, he blew it. And he wasn't even in long enough that I think people are going to make much note of him over time.
I think the real harm there was the disappointment and failure to live up to expectations, because when he was a member of Parliament, former Air Force officer, people who served with him, who talked to me about him, said he was a great officer. Nothing to be ashamed of there. So naturally you come in and he said the right things at the right time. We all voted for him, or enough of us did, I guess. And then he didn't do it. It was, how many letdowns like that can you have?
When they got us quit listening to those muddle-headed staffers in their ill-fitted suits who say you've got to out-liberal the Liberals to win. You can't. No, come in and be a bloody Conservative. If it's going to be on Liberal turf, the Liberals are going to take it every time. So if you've got O'Toole basically giving a carbon copy of what Justin Trudeau is saying, they say, well, we know Trudeau will deliver. We don't know what the heck O'Toole's going to do. He threw his members under the bus. Maybe he'll throw the voters under the bus the day after. No, he was not consistent.
One thing you see from the Toronto Star and some of the more left-leaning press is an attempt to now lionize Erin O'Toole as the right kind of Conservative. Now, during the election, they said, he's a right-wing, dangerous guy, blah, 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 and all these, insert all the isms and phobes, etc. But since he was pushed out, the Star types and other media like that have said, that's a good, respectable Conservative. Now, all the people who are trying to lionize him, none of them would ever vote Conservative, even while he's leader. But I think we've seen kind of an attempt to try and paint him as the good old days of when the Conservatives were sane before the wackos like Per Polyev came in. I think I'll remember him most clearly, if I do at all, as the first Conservative to campaign on a carbon tax and how well that went.
Well, I mean, they will do that. But if this is part of the problem with the media today, that they are no longer reporters gazing down from the mountainside. The cliche used to be that they gaze down from the mountainside and shoot the wounded. They don't even gaze down anymore. They are part of the process. And I would be very suspicious of somebody who had been criticizing any Conservative leader while they were actually in office, and then as soon as they're gone, saying, well, that's the kind of leader you wanted. What's the messaging here? The only good Conservative is a dead Conservative? I don't know, they would. I'm not at all surprised. They just want to present conservatism as a less worthy choice than liberalism, but essentially the same thing.
Yes, it's
the B team.
And if anything, also, it's maybe, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, it's throwing a little more division into the party. It's saying, you see, you guys, you're swinging the wrong way, you're going to lose again. Like, again, part of, I think, what some people want to see when you're coming from conservatism too is confident conservatism, not apologetic conservatism. I'm not saying that conservatism is a necessary evil. You got to present it as it's got good principles that are good for everybody. And all the time they play defensive because this mainstream media is constantly demonizing it as if it is, as you said, a less than worthy choice, and it's not.
I mean, do you ever get puzzled by the depth of the animus that there is in certain parts of the press corps towards Conservatives generally?
The more I read and hear about what's going on in our post-secondary institutions, and we see the graduates that go into journalism and in the mainstream, no, I'm not that surprised at all anymore. These aren't people who lived in the real world. These aren't people who had to work in the common market for jobs or pay bills like others. So they don't understand what's going on the ground. They have their instilled liberal education that they want to share with the world, and they're dominating the legacy media outlets.
Well, that they are.
Okay, well, we're going to go to the floor of the convention for a moment here and just check in what's happening on the floor of the Conservative Leadership Convention.
That most Canadians have ever known. We celebrate her commitment to Canada, her lifetime of service, and the example she set for us all. 20 years ago, in her annual Christmas broadcast, Her Majesty said, "Each day is a new beginning. I know that the only way to live my life is to try to do what is right, to take the long view, to give of my best in all that the day brings, and to put my trust in God." One of the Conservative Party's guiding principles is a belief in the constitutional monarchy, the institutions of Parliament, and the democratic process. Tonight, we are doing our part to support Canada's constitutional monarchy, the institutions of Parliament, and the democratic process. As we mourn the passing of Her Majesty the Queen and mark the beginning of a new reign of His Majesty the King, Charles III, we follow the example she set: to live our life, to do what is right, take the long view, and give our best in all that the day brings. En annonçant les résultats de l'élection de notre nouveau ou nouvelle chef, il y a beaucoup de gens de reconnaître ce soir. Nos 5 candidats et leurs équipes de campagne. Mes collègues tous bénévoles de l'exécutif national. Absolument. Mes collègues encore tout bénévoles au comité organisateur de l'élection du chef présidé par Ian Brody. Le personnel au bureau national mené par notre directeur général, mon ami Wayne Benson. Les parlementaires du Parti conservateur, les députés et les sénateurs qui travaillent au nom des Canadiennes et Canadiens. Later in our program, we will say thank you to my friend and a friend to many. Our outgoing leader.
Okay. Well, we were just hearing there from Robert Batherson, president of the Federal Conservative Party of Canada. We're now joined in studio by Western Standard reporter Jonathan Bradley.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just distracted by your tie.
Yeah, it's in order.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay, Jonathan, actually, before I let you speak, we got you in front of us here, so we got your records. Now, you got to be a late entry here.
Yeah, I
did. July 15th, your numbers went down.
Yes.
You, other than the reporter we had who predicted Jean Charest was going to win on first ballot, insanely, you're the only person who predicts that we've got in the office pool here that Poilievre will win, but not on first ballot. You've got him at 47%, then followed by Charest in second, Lewis, Baber, then Acheson. Explain yourself, sir.
Well, I think it's because even though Poilievre does have this massive support, I do think that Jean Charest will pull some sizable support, probably in the low 20s. Even Leslie Lewis herself, she's obviously going to draw from the social conservative wing of the party, and she'll probably do well, not probably in the 20s, but maybe in the high teens, I'm thinking. So I think that'll probably be a factor. I do believe that Scott Acheson will drop off first. I think he'll probably get, maybe like 2-3% of a vote. And then once he drops off, that'll probably thrust Poilievre up and he'll win on the second ballot.
All right. You sticking to that?
I'm sticking to that.
That's your final answer.
Final answer.
You want to call a lifeline?
I'm not going to call a lifeline.
You're not going to use a lifeline. Okay. You're going to owe someone a six-pack tonight. All right?
Possibly.
You know what? I'm going to give you a double or nothing. I'm just going to give you odds. I'm going to give you odds because you You've taken an unconventional one here. If you win, I'm buying you a 12-pack. But you have to. The deal is you have to drink it all in front of me. We'll see what happens.
Derek, you know me. I'm one drink limit.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to man up. You're at the Western Standard now. You might
Yeah.
be new around here, but you're going to have to learn to drink more than one beer.
Yahoo.
Okay. Cord, do you think there's any chance of anything but Polyev first ballot victory tonight?
Politics are a weird thing. I mean, it's certainly a world. You use that cliche, but never say never. I think it's pretty unlikely. But stranger things have happened. I mean, it's not just all on Charest, but it depends on what sort of votes the other three candidates were cornering as well that could be bringing it in. And I mean, the only thing that could possibly save Charest, though, would be a first ballot win for him, because when you look at the other three candidates after Polyev, I can't see too many of their supporters picking Charest as a second choice. It's all or nothing for Jean Charest, I think. But it would be interesting. It's not impossible. Unlikely, I think, but not impossible.
Now, so we've had the tribute for Aaron O'Toole. We've had some words here. I try not to bully my views around here and make sure everyone shares them. But I think it's pretty widely shared that he was a dismal failure, complete failure as a Conservative leader. You can't see the quadrant I'm drawing here right now, but I've built the quadrant of of just the political sweet spot. And this applies to conservatives, socialists, liberals, anyone. There's 4 things that can happen in politics, and try to picture this in 4 quadrants. In the worst quadrant is losing on something that is not principled. You do something that's not principled to win, and you lost anyway. Put Aaron O'Toole in that quadrant. That's the worst possible quadrant. The next quadrant is winning, not on principle. Put Brian Mulroney in that quadrant, or Jean Chrétien in that quadrant. In fact, put 90% of politicians in that quadrant. Winning, but 90% of winning politicians in that quadrant. You're winning, but you're not doing it on principle. But hey, winning's pretty good. Then there is losing on principle. Put Preston Manning in that quadrant. Put on the left Jack Layton.
What about Maxime Bernier?
Maxime Bernier losing on principle, and you can go back to the Conservative leadership race that he at least officially lost. Took some hard principles, especially around supply management, that clearly cost them the leadership. And then there's the sweet spot, and that is winning on principle, which is admittedly kind of rare. But that, I think, is where you really want to be. You want to win on principle.
Well, you could say Doug Ford did that in 2018.
Perhaps. Definitely not the last time around. Doug Ford last time around was winning not on principle. His first election, you could argue, he was winning on principle.
Yeah. He had that rah, we're going to fire the $6 million man. We're going to scrap the carbon tax. We're going to stand up for small businesses. And then in 2022, I mean, let's be honest, he's a mediocre white man, you could say. He only won because we had Stephen Del Duca, who looks like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers, and had no charisma, and Andrea Horwath, who was in her 4th election as Ontario NDP leader.
Yeah. Okay. So, Aaron O'Toole, slam dunk in the losing without principle category. But now, they're doing a tribute to Candice Bergen, or is it Bergen?
Bergen.
Candice Bergen. I think by most measures, she has served ably. I don't think she hasn't got quite the raving reviews that Rona Ambrose got when she served as interim leader. But I'll give Candice Bergen this: she didn't intervene in the ongoing leadership race, attacking the likely winner or the front runner. Something that is all too clear here in Alberta. You've got the outgoing Premier Jason Kenney throwing an absolute hissy fit that the candidate running probably strongest against his legacy, or at least tied for strongest against his legacy, with Todd Loewen. I'm talking, of course, about Danielle Smith. Throwing a hissy fit that the person, at least leading the race right now to succeed him, is her. Candice Bergen, I think, has shown some class. She's showed, for lack of a better term for a woman, statesmanship, or stateswomanship, maybe we can call it. You know, I think she served pretty ably. When she starts speaking, we're gonna cut into her her pretty soon.
What I'm
here.
curious to know is where Poilievre stands on the Alberta United Conservative Party leadership race. I know that I went a few weeks ago to a rally for Poilievre in Calgary, and Danielle Smith was present, and Poilievre said himself, "I'm not endorsing anyone in this race," but he said, "But I admire Danielle Smith."
Yeah.
So I suspect it's her who he's endorsing. I mean, I think it would be interesting to see.
I'm not sure. I think ideologically and kind of spiritually, they're probably the most aligned.
Yes.
But I think that I know Poilievre is an Albertan by birth, and I think he's probably sympathetic with the Alberta cause. But as a national Conservative leader trying to win votes nationally, I feel like he doesn't like the idea of the Sovereignty Act. That the Sovereignty Act, he fears, could become a boogeyman in the rest. Actually, already is a boogeyman in the rest of the country. It's a boogeyman on more the left side of the UCP already in Alberta.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Leela here, Rajan Sani, and
but
also Rans.
Yeah, but actually, let's talk about that. I think Poilievre slam dunk tonight. Danielle Smith is leading the race, but I don't think she's a slam dunk yet. Maybe it becomes that, but right now, I don't think she's a slam dunk. So let's talk about what that quite possible alignment looks like. Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre. Corey, do you think Pierre Poilievre, so let's say in October, it's October 10th, I don't know, whatever the date is in October, Danielle wins. Do you think the next day Poilievre calls and says, "Hey Danielle, congratulations. Really want to look forward to working with you, but this Sovereignty Act thing, that's gonna cost me seats in Toronto. Could you ixnay that?" Do you think that's gonna happen?
Might try, but I mean, if she did that, she'd be as dead as O'Toole when you flip flop on your prime policy plank on your way in. I mean, I could see some action to try and water it down, or say that we don't, we'll put it in place, but we don't have to pull the trigger until we absolutely have to, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think politically, Poilievre would much rather see Taves, who's a rational, steady as she goes sort of leader in the Conservative end of things. Danielle's a potential hornet sitting in Alberta that will be used as a foil in the federal election against them. Even if you said personally one-on-one over coffee, they're going to agree on 90% of what they talk about.
Yeah.
But when it's dealing with that, he doesn't want to get into a fight with a Conservative premier or be forced to have to distance himself from a Conservative leader in Canada when you're going into a federal election.
We're going to go to Matthew in Ottawa in just 1 second, but it certainly wouldn't be the first time that an Alberta Conservative leader has been used as a foil in the rest of the country, in the screw the West, we'll take the rest liberal strategy. This obviously happened with Ralph Klein repeatedly through the 90s and 2000s, even when Stephen Harper was running.
They did it with Kenny even. I mean.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to go now to Matthew Horwood in Ottawa. He's our parliamentary bureau chief. He's standing by with Ashton Arsenault. Ashton Arsenault. Let's bring Matthew in right now. Matthew, what's happening there?
So I'm here with Ashton Arsenault. He is the vice president with Crestview Strategy, and he has quite a political history. Ashton, good to have you here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about how you got into politics, how you got with the Conservative Party?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally from Prince Edward Island, funny enough, not necessarily known as a conservative bastion. I moved to Ottawa about 10 years ago, and I originally started working in politics in the provincial official opposition at the time, so PC Party, and then I quickly actually started volunteering for Pierre Poilievre.
Interesting. I understand that you were a campaign manager in 2015 for Conservative Canada. Could you want to talk about that and how that went?
Yeah, so 2015, as I'm sure many of your viewers would understand, was a change election. Unfortunately, we did not win that riding. We did not win that election. I was coming out of a minister's office at the time. It was an absolute pleasure, fantastic candidate in Andy Wang that we had a chance to run. And unfortunately, it was just not our night. Learned a lot. And I suspect the next federal election is going to be a little bit different.
For sure. Do you see any of the lessons you learned coming into play during this Conservative leadership race?
Well, I'm actually going to draw an analogy instead of a lesson. Change. It's a change election. This prime minister, unfortunately for him, stale, tired, Canadians not getting ahead. Debt is piling up. People cannot afford, rudimentary things like a place to lie their head, groceries, gas. It's all spiraling out of control. And, unfortunately, In 2015, again, similar. We had a prime minister that was in office for 10 years. And I think, again, the next election is going to be very different.
For sure, for sure. When you were volunteering for Pierre Poilievre's campaign, did you get to meet him and get to, see how he is?
Yeah, so I was actually working in Pierre Poilievre's Hill office on Parliament Hill at the old Ballot building just up the road. You know what? Pierre Poilievre has been the same for as long as I've known him. He works harder than anybody else. He will continue to work harder than anybody else. And if you've had the pleasure of actually campaigning with Pierre, he is the most energetic person in the room. Frankly, I don't know where he gets all of his energy. This guy will run door to door.
Literally run. There's photos of him sprinting house to house.
He will run door to door. Like, those are not staged photos. That's just Pierre Poilievre. And if you've had the pleasure of working alongside him or trying to get him elected on his behalf, a remarkable human being, and I'm very hopeful that it's going to be a special night.
Of course, and we don't know for sure who is going to win the leadership contest, but if Pierre Poilievre does become the candidate, do you think he has any flaws or any drawbacks that might potentially hurt him?
Flaws or drawbacks? No, I wouldn't say that at all. I would say that, if you are somebody that is assuming a role that you've never had before, there's always, some curiosity about, will this individual be up to the challenge? And every single time I've been in a situation that involved Pierre Poilievre, not only was he up to the challenge, he actually exceeded it by a considerable margin. So I would have a lot more fear about many more individuals assuming this role than Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, not going to name any names about candidates?
Not going to name any names.
Fair enough, fair enough. And last question here is, what do you think of the state of Canadian politics as a whole compared to 2015? Do you think some people have said it's gotten a little bit more divisive, a little more fiery? Would you agree?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think a lot of people are angry, and they have reason to be angry. I think our current federal leadership under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been short-sighted, narrow, and he takes care of his buddies and his allies in order to get reelected. And I think we're now looking at a pivot. I think it's going to be a change election. I think there will be a blue wave that crosses the country, and I think Canadians ultimately will be better off.
For sure. Okay, thanks, Ashton, for coming on. Cheers. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Matthew. That's Matthew Horwood, our Parliamentary Bureau Chief, joining us live from the convention in Ottawa. He'll be back on the convention floor itself as things are really heating up there now, but he has since moved to a quieter corner of the convention center in Ottawa. It's pretty loud, so we've got him there for some better audio. We've got Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford back with us. Nigel, yes, right now they're going through a tribute to Candice Bergen. We were just talking about her. I think you overheard some of the comments. I think she's conducted herself pretty well.
Candice Bergen has always been a class act. She was active while I was in Ottawa and observed her. She's 100% one of us, I would say. Strong supporter of rural rights, strong supporter of gun owners, and I'm sorry to see that she's dipping out of the political scene altogether. Mm-hmm. But I can't say you don't deserve to have some time off, madam. She has done a stellar job, and this last episode as the interim leader has just validated every good thing she ever said or did.
Yeah.
Can't speak highly enough of her.
It is a way to go out on a high note. Knowing when to leave politics is the toughest decision in politics. Very, very few people get it right. But serving as interim leader of the opposition is a pretty big deal. And she, unless she becomes the permanent leader someday, this is probably the high point of her career. It's a good time to go out, and she's served for some time now.
Well, never forget that anything can happen while you are interim leader. Usually it doesn't, but you could have a national crisis just come on you out of nowhere, and then you're basically doing the job that the leader would be doing if he were in place, advising the government.
Actually, we've got Candice Bergen going to the mic right now, so we're going to flip over to her and see what Candice Bergen, the outgoing leader, interim leader, has to say.
Wow. Thank you very much. So nice. Wow. Thank you so much. I do want to begin by saying how saddened I am at the passing of our beloved Queen, Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. She served with honor. She really was our Queen. And I have no doubt that her place will be as great as that of Queen Victoria in the story of Canada. May we all, friends, may we all strive to emulate the dignity and the grace that she personified throughout. Michael and I are praying and are thinking of the royal family during this time. Long live the King. Wow. Thank you so much, Dawn, for your incredibly kind and generous words and introduction. My heart is truly filled with gratitude. Dawn, you and I have been very good friends for many years as we've worked together in our party. And like many good conservatives, we did disagree occasionally, but we always respected each other. We've been intensely loyal to our friendship and our cause, and that's what conservatives do. Sharing many laughs, sharing some tears, many dinners, and late night talks. And because of that, Dawn, you and Betty are lifelong friends to Michael and I, and we're very grateful for you. And thank you all. I look across this room and I say thank you all. I know so many of you. It's wonderful to see your faces, to see your smiles, to see so many people that I've seen at conventions and campaigning and throughout the country. So thank you very much for your kindness and your welcome. I know I speak for Michael as well when I say thank you for the appreciation we have felt from all of you, not only this evening, but over the last 7 months. Whether in airports or restaurants, out at the mall, or at EDA events, through phone calls and emails, and even some social media posts, I'm hearing a strong message that our grassroots conservative memberships, the foundation of our party, you are hopeful, and you are excited about the future, and you are proud to be conservative. You are proud that we stand for fiscal responsibility, national unity, law and order, and freedom of expression and belief. Freedom. Not liberal light, but conservative. And in addition to that, literally hundreds of thousands of more Canadians have joined our party and are feeling that same optimism and excitement. So, thank you for helping confirm to me and our entire Conservative caucus that we were on the right track by being a strong, consistent Conservative voice in all that we have said and all that we have done. My heart is filled with gratitude as well to my incredible caucus. First of all, my leadership team made up of Luc Berthold, my deputy leader. Merci beaucoup, Luc, pour le bon travail que vous avez fait. Thank you to Blaine Calkins, our whip, John Brassard, our House leader, as well as MPs Tom Kimmich, Melissa Lantzman, Leanne Rood, and Warren Steinley. You are all extraordinary leaders, and I thank you. And to the rest of our caucus, including senators who work day in and day out in Ottawa and their ridings, and would come to Ottawa every week and bring advice and strategy and passion on how to deal with issues of the day. Thank you to my caucus. Thank you to our caucus chair, Scott Reed, who has done a fantastic job over the last several months. Ladies and gentlemen, our caucus is made up of so many smart, experienced, wise, and compassionate individuals. And if there's one piece of advice I want to give to the new leader, whoever it is, it's this: respect, listen to, and trust our caucus. They will not let you down. Now, you know, every leader leaves a mark, and that pertains also to those who serve as in the interim capacity, leaders in the interim. And I'm thinking of people like Deb Gray. Give Deb a hand. She's doing a great job emceeing tonight. She opened the doors of Stornoway, using it as a working home and starting the wise practice of meeting frequently there with MPs, supporters, and staff to hear and understand more thoroughly what they had to say. One of Deb's marks was openness and outreach. Or the other one I'm thinking about is Ronna Ambrose, my dear friend Ronna. Ronna took over our party after our party suffered a difficult defeat. She brought hope and optimism to our party. With a broad appeal, Ronna attracted people to us, and she lifted women like me into positions of leadership, not as tokens, but because of merit. Ronna is a builder who lifts people up. And then there was John Reynolds. Now, rumor has it John finally got the decaying kitchen redone at Stornoway. Nobody wanted to take the political hit, but as urban legend has it, he accidentally put his foot through a rotten floorboard at Stornoway, and when he did, he said, "Enough is enough, I'm going to do it." And he left the official opposition residence with some new floors and a sturdy, durable chopping block kitchen counter built to last. John Reynolds left his mark as a steady and experienced leader. And then there was Dr. Grant Hill. Grant was our first interim leader after Stephen Harper and Peter MacKay led us to unification. Grant's mark was a solid, sober professionalism that was so critically required in the early days of a new party. And so to all of my predecessors, all of the leaders of our party, all who have left their mark, both permanent and leaders in the interim, you have our deep and respectful appreciation for the strength and the success of the party that you helped build. So, yes, go ahead, give them all a hand. We all leave a mark, and we want it to be lasting, and we want it to be a good mark. And I hope I've been able to leave my mark as well. I want to be remembered as a leader who helped bring unity and pride to our Conservative Party. I want to be remembered as a leader who helped us move away from identity politics and labeling in our party and towards unity in disagreement. Unity while still holding different views. Unity, not uniformity. So my friends, my fellow Conservatives, as I leave, I want to once again ask you, please don't allow yourself, whatever kind of Conservative you are, to be broken into groups and labeled. Do not descend into the cauldron of identity politics and division in our own party. Do the opposite. Live, talk, and walk unity, even when you disagree with each other. Actually, especially when you disagree with each other. Unity as Conservatives and unity as Canadians. I love this party. I love this party. It was so interesting, Dawn, as you talked about what I've done and how I started as a volunteer. And I cannot imagine, I cannot believe that I stand here before you as your leader. It has just been an incredible experience, and I feel so blessed to be able to be here, but to be able to tell young people the opportunity that they have, not just young people, people of all ages, to be able to get involved and make a difference for their country and in their party. So it was with mixed emotions that I announced earlier this week that I will not be seeking re-election. After 14 remarkable years and 5 elections, I've decided it's time to open new doors and pursue other interests and passions. But no matter where I am, my friends, or what I am doing, I will always be a proud Conservative, doing all I can for our leader and our party. And now, speaking of leader, tonight is the night. Tonight is the night we're going to find out who our members have selected to be the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I want to thank each one of the candidates, Jean, Leslyn, Pierre, Roman, and Scott for putting your names forward and the great work that you and your teams have done. Thank you so much. And friends, that's awesome. I have no doubt we will support our new leader. We will buttress the new team. We will help them, we will prop them up and advise them. We'll give our new leader the chance to flourish and pave the way for a new federal Conservative government. Now, I have served federally for 14 years, and on one hand, it does seem like a long time, but on the other, it really goes by in a flash. I started as a volunteer, and as I said, I'm leaving from this stage as the person in whom was bestowed the trust of leadership. And so I want to say a special thank you to Manitoba, to my constituents, to my home, to the people of Portage Lisgar. Manitobans are great people. They are resilient, innovative, compassionate, hardworking, and generous. And I want to thank all of those who supported me, not only in the last 7 months, but those who helped bring me to Ottawa in the first place. Over the last several months, a very special thank you goes out to Mr. Wayne Benson, the executive director of our party and a fellow Manitoban. Wayne came out of retirement in PEI, and he took on the job of executive director at my request during a very difficult time. In fact, it was literally when the Emergencies Act had been called. So in the literal middle of a so-called emergency, Wayne Benson came forward. What a hero he was to me. And with the help of Rob Batherson, Ian Brody, James Dodds, and a host of staff and volunteers, they guided us through this leadership race. And I want to say thank you to each one of you. To my family, my siblings, and especially my children, Lucas, Delaney, and Parker, and your children, thank you for sharing your mom and Grammy, your daughter and sister with the country. And to my husband, Michael, who has been a true partner and companion to me through this entire journey as leader. He has worked with me, he has served, and his love he gave to me, and I could give to you. And I want to thank you so much, my love. And finally,
listening to we were just listening to Candice Bergen, outgoing interim leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I think she's in the last few minutes of her leadership. She stepped up in what she said was the so-called national emergency. It was quite a time to step into a national role like that. Gentlemen, your biggest takeaways from Candice Bergen's good farewell speech?
Well, if they only want one thing to delineate themselves, to draw the line between the Conservatives and the Liberals, take what she said when she advised her colleagues, don't descend into identity politics. Because that is the thing that will kill this country quicker than anything. There was a lot of takeaways in there, but that was the one that resonated with me very, very strongly.
Yeah, and we're going to have the results very, very soon. We're expecting them at 5:30, possibly sooner, but knowing these guys, possibly later. But Corey, your biggest takeaway from Bergen's farewell speech?
Well, likewise from Nigel, that's a great point, because I mean, it's identity politics. I'm sick to death of it. It's divisive. It's bad for all of us, and it's bad enough that the Liberals have basically made that their main focus. They need a counterpoint, and just don't even start down the road into it. So it's great advice on Ms. Bergen's way out. The other part, she reiterated unity a number of times. So, and that's true. If the party is fighting with themselves from within, the Liberals will march right back in there. When this race is over, they've got to get it together and they've got to stay unified. And she's obviously been feeling that as an interim leader. So
We've got a quick comment from Drew Knight. He says, 5:30 when? Well, what do you mean when? It's Mountain Standard Time. We're in Calgary, for God's sakes. We're at the center of the universe. And the center of the universe at the time right now is 5:20. I don't even need to say local. You should know it's Mountain Standard Time. My apologies, though, if you're in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or BC. Your time zones are valid as well.
Valid.
They're valid. They're valid time zones. Anything outside of those 4 time zones, 3 or 4 time zones.
Good reminder. We've got viewers and listeners though from across the country here.
Yeah.
So.
We do appreciate our Eastern Bastard listeners as well. We understand we've got some kindred spirits out there, and we welcome them to come. I'm just saying your time zone is not valid. Okay. So yeah, they're just wrapping up with Candace Bergen right now. One guy we haven't gotten to much yet. We've gone through all the different candidates, but we're going to get to the guy on our list here. We've got we forgot even to mention, but he's kind of been ranked by everybody in the pool, regardless of where they're ranking. The one consistent is that he's expected to come in last in what I think is now, is that 5th or 4th place? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5th place. Scott Atchison. Expectations tonight and expectations for what you expect. What role might he play going forward?
Well, he'll play a role. He's a decent man. I don't really know what he stands for. His message never got through to me. Maybe I should have paid more attention to him, but it just never seemed that he was on the field. I do think that he was, however, he's got a place. He is minister material.
It's a way to put it. I mean, you look at 2 different things, like between Roman Baber and Atchison. Baber, we could see as being ascendant. He might even turn into something much more down the road. I see Atchison as establishing himself. Okay, he's a good, solid guy. He took part in the race, and he'll get a junior cabinet portfolio, maybe even a senior spot on the bench. But he just didn't stand out. But to his credit, he didn't get enough. Well, it's one of my pet issues. But he didn't get enough credit for it. He came out against supply management. He was the only one. Every leadership candidate I had, I cornered them on that one, and they would not condemn supply management. And I tell you, I'm just going to go on my quick rant. That's the most odious policy that they got to blush when they call themselves a conservative and support that piece of socialism. And at least Atchison had the courage to say, I oppose it. I understand the political reasons that others don't want to get into it with that thing. But he did do that. And it kind of shows it doesn't get you political traction opposing that either. It didn't do him any favors by doing it.
Well, he didn't make it a centerpiece, maybe the way that Maxime Bernier very notoriously did when he ran for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. Well, let's actually talk about this. This issue gets under my skin. Now, when he said he was against supply management, I think that announcement came on your show here when you were on Triggered. I think that's where it came from.
Well, just prior, actually. I think.
Now, on the other side, Pierre Poilievre, if there's a big knock to his conservative credentials, it's on that. And, you can't say it's a principled conservative position to support a Soviet-style supply management system. You cannot do it. It's not a real thing. An answer I might grudgingly accept, not like, but maybe grudgingly accept is, you know what? Maxime Bernier tried it, and it resulted in defeat. It's just not politically possible. It's outside of the Overton window right now. Actually, it probably is inside the Overton window. The problem is that it's such a powerful lobby. It has so much political influence and money that we can't politically do it. So if the answer is, you know what, it's just not politically smart to do and it'll result in defeat on all the other issues that matter, I'd say that's probably, that might be a case of cowardice being the better, discretion being the better part of valor, perhaps. But you can't look me in the eyes and say that that's a conservative principled thing to do the way Andrew Scheer famously did.
No, right to the taking the glass. No, look, I mean, if you're the person picking up the butter, the cheese, or the milk from the supermarket, this discussion of dairy prices is very much within that famous Overton window, which describes what you can talk about and what you can't talk about, which is over here. I have never understood the strength of this lobby. There's 3,000 farmers. There's 3 million people who buy milk every day. It defeats me, but it is proved to be the stumbling block for conservatives because it is not a conservative principle. And I think this is going to be a hard thing for somebody like Mr. Poilievre and the people who are most likely, I think, to be close to him if he ever forms a cabinet, This is going to be a hard one for them to wrap their heads around, because none of them are going to like it, and everybody is going to be telling them, no, you can't touch it.
Yeah, well, I know Paulie didn't like it when I
Hold
asked
on.
him about it.
I want to make sure we're just not missing anything here. Let's just quickly go back to our feed live from the floor in Ottawa. I think we've got, that might be Ian Brody. He's the chair of the Leadership Election Committee.
Every member that I served with committed untold hours.
Under the watchful eye of our Chief Returning Officer and his Deputy Chief Returning Officers, and from the personnel on loan from the party. Nous devons remercier les personnels du parti pour les longues heures et le dévouement. Nous tenons à leur exprimer notre gratitude, ainsi qu'à leurs familles, pour tout ce qui a permis de rendre ce processus aussi fluide pour tout le monde. Thank you to the party staff, the party volunteers who helped get us to this point this evening. It was our remarkable range of candidates, and there are thousands of organizers and volunteers from coast to coast that recruited all of these new members to our party. Each candidate and their teams and their experienced volunteers brought ideas to recruit Canadians. The party staff processed the hundreds of thousands, 500,000 new memberships added to our party. We got more than 670,000 ballots out to our members. We got them all back to be counted, and it all went as smoothly as possible. I want to thank the candidates and their teams for their hard work. I hope every candidate and every volunteer is proud of the work they did during this race. I would also like to thank National Council for the confidence that they showed in our committee and our team, and along with that, our thanks to Candice Bergen for her extraordinary support and her personal friendship to me. I would be remiss if I did not thank my predecessors as LEOC co-chairs of the past, Dan Nolan and Lisa Raitt, for their extraordinary work and for the inheritance of the expertise and track record that we got when we got our flying start. Thankfully, together, we met the challenge of a record-breaking membership along with the trust of our members. At this time, I'd like to invite my fellow volunteer, Don Nightingale, our Chief Returning Officer and a Director of the Conservative Fund Canada, and my dear friend Wayne Benson, the Executive Director of the party, to come forward and review some of the relevant rules and outline the role of Deloitte. Don and Wayne are both former three-term national councillors of our party, and like me, somehow when the call comes, they just don't know how to say no. I can testify that they are both extraordinarily loyal and committed members of our party. They put in tireless hours to deliver this race, and I am personally thankful that they did agree to serve when they were asked. Don and Wayne, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Try not to be nervous. I remember well that evening in February when I answered the phone. Hi, Wayne, it's Candice. I need you to come to Ottawa as executive director of the party. This was not how I planned to spend the next 7 months of my retirement. I inherited a staff at headquarters that, for the most part, had been working from home for the better part of the previous 2 years. Personally, I had a very steep learning curve ahead of me. However, I will say this: without the commitment, dedication, and unwavering support of our staff, we would not be where we are today. Staff stepped up each and every day, faced the challenges that come with any leadership contest with determination and resiliency, and got the job done as they had already done twice before. But let's not forget, this time our membership tripled in size, and every task along the way, yes, every task along the way was similarly magnified. Every single member of our party needs to know how valuable our staff is and was to this undertaking. I am fortunate and honored to have become part of their team. I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. We could not have done it without each and every one of you.
Thank you, Wayne. When you asked me to serve on your team as the Chief Returning Officer, I said to myself, this is going to be really interesting. But I had no idea how interesting it turned out to be. I didn't foresee, and I don't think any of us foresaw, the unprecedented interest of Canadians in this leadership race and the historic numbers. My microphone not working, let me go here. And the historic membership numbers in the Conservative Party.
Oh, you're right, Don. It's been quite a ride. And I want to add to that, despite the many challenges we faced over the past 7 months, it has been an absolute pleasure to work with you and Ian on this leadership race. I think we were a really good team.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that, Wayne. It was a real pleasure. I'd like to say a few words, ladies and gentlemen, about my duties as Chief Returning Officer. The duties of the Chief Returning Officer in this leadership race are primarily to monitor the process, to ensure compliance with our Constitution and with the rules and procedures determined by the Leadership Election Organizing Committee. And I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone of a couple of the more important rules in this race. First, our Constitution requires that this race will be conducted on a one-member, one-vote point system. Well, what does that mean? It means that each of the 338 ridings in Canada are allocated 100 points. The Constitution, however, states that only ridings that have achieved a minimum of 100 valid votes cast will receive the full complement of 100 points. Leadership candidates are allocated points based on the percentage of votes they receive in each riding. 30% of the votes means 30 points. To win, a leadership candidate must attain a majority of points from across the country. If no candidate receives a majority of points on the first ballot, we will hold a second ballot. This is what is called a single transferable ballot. On the second ballot, the candidate receiving the fewest points is dropped, and that candidate's points are reallocated to the second preference, with the vote totals, or the point totals rather, being recalculated for all the candidates. This process is repeated until one candidate receives a majority of points and is declared the winner.
I would like to add that the point totals at the close of voting are verified by Dawn as CRO and independently by Deloitte LLP. The results are then reported to Ian, Chair of LEOC, and Ian will then announce the results here at this podium. One excerpt from our Constitution in part states, National Council or the Leadership Election Organizing Committee will engage an independent third party to count the ballots in the votes specified. LEOC, pursuant to their rules, appointed Deloitte to monitor and verify the leadership election process and result. And then Deloitte LLP was retained by Conservative Fund Canada, the Leadership Election Organizing Committee, and the Chief Returning Officer to act as an independent advisor and observer for the 2022 leadership election. Conservative Fund Canada will be and was solely responsible for the provision of oversight and staff for carrying out activities adhering to all applicable election rules, including the credentials rules and counting rules.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the moment has arrived. Ian and I and Wayne are going to walk over to the results room and obtain the vote results for round one. Assuming everything goes according to plan, we will be back here on stage in 10 to 15 minutes with the results. They have not been calculated yet. They're ready to press the button on the computer and give us the results. So don't go away.
Okay, well, the moment you've all been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to walk to a room and observe things, and I'll be back here in 10 to 15 minutes.
20 minutes of foreplay, and then I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in 10 minutes to finish you up. God, what are you guys doing?
That's a classic Corey Morgan
I get
way of
annoyed
putting
with
it.
these guys that they're nitpicking and self-important bureaucrats, and just give the results.
I get that they've got to go through some of the formal stuff. There's formal stuff involved. It's a big deal. You don't want people thinking it was funny business. But holy crap, Nigel! Talk about leave.
This
is political blue balls.
They've got free TV time until 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
Do you think they really want to give any of it up? Because once they say what the result is, then viewership is going to start falling away, and the new leader, whoever it is still got to make their speech. So I'm as frustrated as maybe not as frustrated as the woman you were talking about, but
it's amazing she's still with her.
but I am somewhat irritated that I'm going to have to wait for another 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the comments. I know you guys are too. Good God! I mean, I've never. Why didn't they go to the room 15 minutes earlier and walk out with
As
it?
Nigel said, though, I mean, they're milking it out. This is a big moment. You want to dominate the news. It's Saturday night. People's attention is going to turn pretty quickly once they know who won.
Yeah, and we want you all to stay with us. And I swear to God, we're not going to milk this out any longer. And we know what the Tories did last time. We had an 8-hour broadcast. We were done. We literally took a dinner break. It was so bad. We came back. Still nothing.
We locked ourselves out during that dinner break too. We could write a small
we had
book
to
on
call
how that night
security
went.
to let us back into the building.
It was a comedy of errors. That.
It was not good. And then at the end, we still didn't have an answer. We had to wait till 1:30 in the morning, at least Eastern time, I think it was.
Maybe I'm being a little too pessimistic about the level of interest that is going on here. I'm going to share the numbers we were just talking about.
Why don't we go through that?
So the population of Canada is 38 million. 27.3 million of them are eligible to vote. That's Elections Canada 2019. Go with that figure. 670,000 Canadians are members of the Conservative Party. That's like nearly 2.5% of the people eligible to vote. Oh yeah, I've calculated.
Eligible to vote.
We had one that was on the total
if you go by
population.
eligible to vote.
Yeah, eligible to vote.
So among general Canadian eligible voters.
Absolutely. 27 million people eligible to vote, and 670,000 of them are members of this party.
Almost, I think, except the Conservative Party and all political parties I'm aware of do allow a significant number of people who are not eligible to vote in general elections to vote here. That includes youth, I think, down to the age of 14 or so.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it includes permanent residents who are not yet citizens. So if you're an immigrant and you're not a citizen, but you're a permanent resident, you could be a member of the Conservative Party of Canada, Liberals,
But
New
not able
Democrats.
to vote.
So they're not the exact same, but I take your point.
This is a huge.
It is a huge.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what the membership of the Liberal Party is offhand.
I'm
but,
just being pedantic.
I'm just.
But I think typically in Canada, yeah, there's only about 2% of the whole population are members of any party.
Combined.
So, yeah, so that we're not a good country for party membership realistically, but I mean that's been consistent with us, and for CPC to sell that many memberships, and these are sold memberships, not free ones like the Liberals tried giving away.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's
you know, and it is astounding that political party membership is so low in Canada. I get why. Is, you know, people get involved in parties and they volunteer, they knock on doors, hammer in signs, give money, and you're generally not that listened to. But there are cases where, you know, grassroots involvement does have a significant effect. It was grassroots involvement that threw out the Premier of Alberta not very long ago. It's thrown out several premiers of Alberta over the last decade and so. Political party membership is a way to have influence, but it's what you do with that membership. If you're just simply a member of a party.
It's active memberships, and then there's memberships. And that'll be the interesting thing to see the turnout. Because it's one thing to sell a few 100,000 memberships with a bunch of, well, it's a big thing, but to get them actually to come out and cast their ballot and mail that in, that's the whole second stage of these races. And that's a lot of work, because you got a lot of people that they're buying it out of politeness because a volunteer kept nagging them so much, and they don't get around.
So let's talk a bit. This kind of brings me, I think, to Patrick Brown, disqualified for some alleged breaking of some fundraising and financing rules. Now, he claimed to have sold by far the second most number of memberships, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 or so. If that was true, that is a huge number that would normally actually probably win you a leadership race. Right. Now, he made no bones about it that those were to new Canadians, to immigrant communities, maybe first and second generation. You know, Patrick Brown went out of his way to say, I'm not interested in actually winning over Conservatives. I'm going just for the immigrant vote, and it's a very different kind of politics. It tends not to be at least as ideological, if not sometimes non-ideological at all. A lot of it's just kind of going to the right. You go to the right church, right gurdwara, right mosque or temple or whatever synagogue. You go to these things, and it's a glad-handing kind of politics. It might involve promises that are kind of, you know, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's often more transactional rather than ideological, like, I will do this because this is something. We don't know exactly how much that is, but he did claim a significant portion of it, and it wasn't that strongly disputed. It wasn't nearly as much as Polyev, but it was a lot. But I'm expecting those Patrick Brown people are probably not going to vote in terribly big numbers. If they're the guys not there, do you expect them to turn out in significant numbers, but maybe back Patrick Brown more or less insinuated, well, you should vote for Charest now. Do you expect them to do that?
So the way this tends to work is that the person who is selling himself to the immigrant community often is really talking to a very few people who are influential within that community. Mm-hmm. So that think of it from the perspective of somebody who has moved into Canada from a country where English is not the first language. You're still finding your feet. You're still trying to figure out what's going on, and so who do you look to? You look to somebody who is of the same nationality but speaks English better, understands the system. That person says you need to vote for this candidate. That's probably what you're going to do. So now you've got the candidate who sold the memberships out of the race, and they probably aren't going to bother because they don't really, unless they get an instruction from the person, the community leader, and that community leader, by the way, this relates to what Derek was saying about things being transactional. Those political parties tend to look after those community leaders very well.
Yeah, and a lot of those memberships were sold. I mean, we can't assume that every individual in the community, some will take it up seriously and look, but now they're dispersed. So they're going to look at all of the candidates and they're going to say, well, maybe I'll cast for that person or that. And most will probably stay home. So the impact potentially that could have been there when Brown was in is definitely gone.
You know who really picks up points in immigrant communities is anybody who can solve the paperwork jam when they want to bring somebody else in. Whoever can do that.
And that's a great point, because that's a huge issue. It
That
should
is
be
a
a huge
huge
issue in
issue.
Canada right now.
Well,
the only thing
yeah.
worse than passport renewals is immigration processing. I mean, we've got a terrible backlog, and the Liberals have really dropped the ball, and they should be twisting that knife.
Well, that's one. So Jason Kenney, a lot of people out east don't understand why Jason Kenney got into so much trouble in Alberta. It's because a lot of people out east, they remember the other Jason Kenney, the Jason Kenney that was popular, that got elected premier and UCP leader in Alberta, and by most accounts, he was an incredible immigration minister, probably the most well-known. How often does anyone know that as a household name, the name of the immigration minister? And he did that kind of ethnic and religious minority.
Well, he would do 3 events a night.
Minister of Curry in a hurry.
You say what you like about Mr. Kennedy as premier of the province, and people will and do. But in that particular role, he was a huge asset to the Harper government. Often would get to 3 different ethnic events a night, give his speech, move to the next one. I don't know when he ever slept. That was his modus operandi.
He did the kind of glad-handing.
Got that vote out first.
He did the glad-handing part of it very well, but he actually did some of the real work of it well, like on streamlining these things.
As a minister, he was very effective.
He made some changes. Some people might not expect of him, but he would. He brought in the refugee program for persecuted gay and other sexual minority groups coming from Iran and places like that. He had some real concrete action on it that backed up kind of the glad-handing Curry circuit that he did. Patrick Brown, well, I guess didn't have the opportunity because he wasn't the Minister of Immigration. But I don't think we're going to see many of those votes cast because they were for him. Also, that kind of transactional politics tends to have a low voter turnout as well. Jason Kenney, again, he played to that as his strength during the leadership review vote. He really focused his membership sales and leadership review lead up to that on minority communities, and that's one reason they thought they were kind of a lock to keep Kenney, and their voter turnout was so low, which often happens when you're selling memberships because people are often sometimes buying it for them. As I said, it's sometimes more transactional. I don't think we're going to see a lot of those people here, and I think that's going to mean proportionally a lower voter turnout in this race here, because Patrick Brown's people, some of them are going to vote, but I think mostly we're just going to see them stay at home.
Yeah, and some of these races do always have notoriously low turnouts.
Okay, so we're actually going to go to Matthew Horwood now on the floor of the Conservative Convention in Ottawa. He's got an update for us. We're expecting the results very, very soon. Let's bring Matthew in right now.
Hi guys. So yeah, we are experiencing a little bit of a delay here. We should know in about 5 to 10 minutes what the results are going to be. A little bit of griping among the audience members. Somebody made a joke that perhaps they ripped the ballots again like they did last time around, which could be resulting in these delays. But generally, everybody groaned when it was announced, and everybody just wants to see who's going to be the leader, which most people are expecting is going to be Pierre Poilievre.
Matthew, what's the mood like on the convention floor? Are people? I know last time people got angry because it went on literally for more than half of a day waiting. Obviously, the wait is not as long this time. We had some words around here in the Calgary headquarters making fun of them, saying, "Now for the moment you've all been waiting for, where I am going to walk away for 10 to 15 minutes to a room and get the results." People were, I think people are pretty reasonably a little bit miffed about that. But how are people feeling there? Are they fine? Is it just kind of a party atmosphere, or are they frustrated? What's going on?
Yeah, they did kind of screw with our expectations when they said now is the moment and then walked away and gave us another 10 or 15 minutes. But generally, people are they were a bit upset because I think people still remember what happened last time around, and so they don't want a repeat of that. But generally, it's a festive atmosphere. Lots of people have been drinking. They're just walking around chatting with each other, but people want to get the show on the road. They want to know who the leader is going to be, and any sort of delay is going to be not well received.
Have you got an estimate on when we're expected to get these results? How long are we going to be waiting here?
They said we would know in about 15 minutes, about 10 minutes ago, but I imagine there'll be a little bit more of a delay. But certainly, I'd say it shouldn't be, by 8 o'clock, we should have some idea of who the leader is going to be. Hopefully. I mean, we'll see.
I don't think you heard me earlier, but Eastern Standard Time is not a valid time zone for the Western Standard, I'll have you know. That's 8 o'clock your time, bud. So yeah, that'd be around 6 o'clock, I think, Mountain Standard Time. Okay, Matthew, just be standing by. We're going to come to you pretty soon. I think at the very least after we hear the speech from Pierre Poilievre. Sorry, I mean whoever they happen to announce as the leader in 8 to 9 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, so you've heard here, is the Conservative Party capable of staying on time? Is this possible?
I don't think any party can control this kind of thing unless it's rigged. This one isn't. So there's going to be glitches. There's going to be things that go wrong. And heaven knows, we have our own equipment issues, and we got to be a little sympathetic to the party. But
I don't accept that.
No,
I think it shows it. I think it shows incompetence. How many? What is it? Their 100th leadership race? I mean, come on. It's not like this is a wheel that's being invented. I mean, we've got modern mechanisms. We've had an incredibly long timeline. We've had a close off for the votes. You knew how many memberships were sold. You should know how many volunteers have to open those
Corey,
envelopes.
we got 2% of the population of the voting population of Canada. They got to go through,
and that's a lot. And you had the time and the resources and the ability.
Well, look, this is the 4th race being conducted under these pretty much exact rules for the Conservative Party of Canada. Before then, there were similar-ish rules, minus the point system, for the Canadian Alliance, 2 races of the Canadian Alliance, 1 for the Reform Party before then, and then infinitely under, admittedly, a different set of rules for the Progressive Conservative Party and Conservative Party before that. I mean, some of this is in the hands of the bean counters at Deloitte. And just so some of you know, Deloitte is not Dominion. It's not a vote counting system. They're an accounting for an auditing. Sorry, they're an auditing firm.
Oversight. They're
they're trustworthy. Now it depends what role they're given. They're generally not counting the votes themselves, but it's kind of an oversight. I know there was a lot of controversy when Andrew Scheer was declared the winner. In that case, they bizarrely destroyed the ballots before even announcing who the leader was. And even if there was nothing afoot, that's strange optics. I think since then the Conservative Party has said, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep the ballot. You should keep them on the side. This way, if there is a dispute, there's actually a paper trail. I think it's generally considered fairly trustworthy. If there is ever meddling in the race, it'll be more on the administrative side and padding the number of memberships and that kind of thing. It's not going to be in the counting itself for the most part. That's going to be overseen by Deloitte, which is, I think, considered pretty reputable. I know we've got some people in the comments taking issue with it, but I don't.
Nigel's right in that, like a clean race, yeah, you can get the hiccups, you can get things that happen because you're honestly going into it. The problem is, though, when you get these delays, the conspiracy theorists are already putting them out there, guys. And the longer you drag it out, the worse it looks. Even if there's no basis to it, it could be a simple mistake. But these things are costly, and I really wish they'd iron out some of that.
Oh yeah. Oh. Apart from anything else, we all want to move on to the next thing, don't we?
Well, I've only got so many foreplay jokes in me.
Well, it's probably a good thing, but
more than likely.
Okay, so we're also going to have Steve Outhouse on soon. He is a representative from the Pierre Poilievre campaign. I think we're going to be standing by for him. Matthew Horwood's going to have him soon from the convention floor in Ottawa. Before we go to that, though, what do we expect from Pierre Poilievre's speech in a few minutes? Sorry, I correct myself again. The eventual winner announced in a few minutes. What do we expect from Pierre?
Well, the eventual, whoever wins is going to have to make a speech in which he thanks everybody, says something kind.
Oh, sorry. Let me revise the question.
Yes.
So a lot of you don't know. Nigel was the chief speechwriter for Stephen Harper. You managed the speechwriting office for Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister's office from
2009 to 2015. So,
yeah.
I mean, if it was the speeches, then I'm the guy who lost the 2015 elections.
Well, arguably helped win the 2011.
And well, that's certainly
we could look at it one way or another. So if you were, let me rephrase the question. I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me rephrase the question. If you were Pierre Poilievre's speechwriter tonight, what are the really big key points you need to put in?
All right. If I were writing for Pierre Poilievre, I would go hard on his authenticity. You know, one thing about Mr. Poilievre is that you may or may not agree with what he says, but you can be in no doubt that he believes what he says. And not only that, that will be the basis for what he does next. So many, I mean, we were talking earlier about Mr. O'Toole. Mr. O'Toole is not alone in being a politician who tells you what you want to hear, gets the job, and then doesn't follow through with what he promised. I think that Mr. Poilievre, if he lands the top job, will attempt to do what he has said he is going to do. And he has been very, very sympathetic to young people who are facing problems of affordability. They can't buy a house. Some of them are barely able to pay rent. And it is that he is going to talk. He talks about inflation. He talks about housing costs. He talks about opportunity and how he is going to put that out. And you know, that is what people want to hear about in the years leading up to an election. It's fine to talk about airy-fairy things. Fine to talk about climate change, as Mr. Trudeau loves to do. It is fine to talk about all the other virtue signals that Mr. Trudeau sends out. But you can't eat climate change, and you can't run your car on it, and you need opportunity. Mr. Poilievre will not have an easy ride. Wherever your true north is, there will be swamps and mountains between you and it. But I have no doubt that he knows where he wants to go and that he will do everything in his power to get there. That's what he will say in his speech, and he will say it far better than I have.
So speaking of saying things well, I did not say the right thing well. I'm pretty sure actually Steve Outhouse is from the Leslyn Lewis campaign. I think I mixed that up. But Matthew Horwood, when he comes on with Mr. Outhouse, he'll disabuse me of whatever misinformation and fake news I have just spread. Corey, you have not been a speechwriter to a prime minister, but let's pretend you're the speechwriter for Pierre Poilievre. I'm assuming they've probably written a victory speech for tonight. I don't even know if they've written a concession speech, but let's, although actually I don't think the losers get to give a concession speech at these things, because you never know, they might make it as an opportunity to go on some unhinged rant. But let's say you're Mr. Poilievre's speechwriter, and you've written the speech that he is probably about to give in a few minutes. What are the key points you're putting in?
Well, I mean, the first part, again, is the unity aspect. I mean, really be gracious to the other candidates, really reach out, try to build that unity right off the bat. Because even if the other candidates haven't had a chance or won't get a chance to come up and lob bombs, if that's what they were inclined to do, some of their supporters are going to. Some other people are going to be turning on their heel and stomping out of the room. So the sooner you can collect them in and make them feel welcome, the better. And then, yeah, the campaign for the next election starts now. So where's he coming from? And as Nigel was saying, you know, climate change, these ideological things, they've served Trudeau fine this far, but we're coming on some tough economic times. And I think most people would agree you can trust Poilievre on the economy. If you looked at traditional polls, quite often with people in general, if they're swing votes, they say, I like the Liberals, but I trust the Conservatives more on the economy. When times get tough, they turn to the Conservatives, you know, because they trust them to balance the budget and fix their wallets. It's kind of when we can afford Liberals that people tend to drift towards them. So there's quite an opportunity. And if Poilievre can focus on that, focus on steady, I guess you could say reliable government in tough times, he can really start scoring points.
So it's not in the comments section, but I actually just got an email from Troy Highbean. I'm going to read this one. I know, you know, I always love to read the negative comments, but I like this one because it's a positive comment about my negative comment. I thought I was getting some hate mail because the subject says, EST, Eastern Standard Time, not a valid time zone at Western Standard. Oh, we're going to go over. Forget what I'm saying here. We're going to go straight live to the results coming in now.
I just want to say we would have been up here much sooner, except the elevator was in use.
Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, could you take your seats, please? Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, j'ai des résultats. I have some results. It's my great privilege to announce the results. Nous avons un nouveau chef. We have a new leader, the next Prime Minister of Canada, prochaine Premier Ministre du Canada, the Honorable Pierre Poilievre and Anna Poilievre.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Before I begin, thank you very much. Before I begin introducing my husband, allow me to express my sadness at the passing of our queen. May she rest in peace. Long live the king. My husband and I, thank you. My husband and I share the same values, although our background is a little different. Mon mari et moi, nous partageons les mêmes valeurs, malgré que notre parcours est un peu différent. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and my family immigrated to Canada in 1995 in a working-class neighborhood in the east end of Montreal, Hochelaga-Maisonneuve, puis Pointe-aux-Trembles. Je suis née à Caracas, Venezuela, et ma famille a migré ici en 1995 à Montréal, dans le quartier d'Hochelaga-Maisonneuve et puis Pointe-aux-Trembles. En tant que mujer latina, es un placer y un orgullo de poder ser una voz fuerte para el pueblo latino y para muchos inmigrantes. My father, he went from wearing business suits and managing a bank to jumping on the back of a pickup truck to collect fruits and vegetables because that's what he had to do to feed his family. Mon père est passé de porter des complets et à gérer une banque en montant à l'arrière d'une camionnette avec des vêtements usagés afin de ramasser des fruits et des légumes dans les champs, car c'est ce qu'il devait faire pour nourrir notre famille. The Galindo family, present here tonight, taught us hard work and that there is no greater dignity than to provide for your own family. La famille Galindo présente ici ce soir, nous a enseigné qu'il faut travailler fort et qu'il n'y a pas plus grande dignité que de subvenir aux besoins de votre famille. Years later, here we are. My father is a small business owner, and my siblings went all from their humble beginnings, including me working at McDonald's, to being a renovator, a registered practical nurse, a proud member of the Canadian Air Forces, and here I am, la petite fille de Pointe-aux-Trembles, standing in front of you and by my husband's side. Dios mío, ¿quién se lo hubiera imaginado? Mon Dieu, qui aurait imaginé ça? My husband's story is a little different. He was born in Calgary to a teenage mother who had just lost her own mother. She gave Pierre for adoption to two wonderful school teachers from Saskatchewan. And again, they're all present here tonight. L'histoire de mon mari est un peu différente. Il est né à Calgary d'une mère adolescente qui venait tout juste de perdre sa propre mère. Elle a donné Pierre en adoption à deux merveilleux professeurs d'école élémentaire provenant de la Saskatchewan et ils sont présents ici ce soir. So, we both grew up the same way. Our families living paycheck to paycheck, knowing that filling your tank of gas, it is not a luxury, but a way of transportation to go to work and to bring your children to school. Donc, nous avons grandi très similairement, nos familles vivant toujours en attendant le prochain chèque de paie, en sachant que faire le plein d'essence n'est pas un luxe, mais un moyen de transport pour aller travailler ou amener vos enfants à l'école. So, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, a principled man, a good son, a wonderful father, and a loving husband. This is the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada et votre prochain premier ministre, my husband, Pierre Poilievre.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Merci, Anaïda. Je t'aime. I begin on behalf of everyone here, expressing my sorrow at the passing of our beloved Queen. Two tiny words, the Queen. Yet on every continent, those two words conjure up more than a picture. They also express an idea, the idea of decency and duty. Elizabeth II, though she might have recoiled at the thought, was the world's most famous woman. Yet she was our queen, our sovereign, for almost half of our nation's existence. In her 22 visits here, yes, indeed, in her 22 visits here and her dealings with 13 prime ministers, she exhibited the virtues we most cherish: dignity, civility, humility, candor, and above all else, service. That's why her death, though not unexpected, is nonetheless shocking. We felt we knew her. We felt that her strengths were ours, the strengths of a country which by good fortune and God's grace we call home. And that, perhaps, is why I feel a small catch in my throat when I utter the words that no leader has stated in this country for over 7 decades: God save the King. Tonight begins the journey to replace an old government that costs you more and delivers you less with a new government that puts you first, your paycheck, your retirement, your home, your country. by tackling liberal inflation. We'll put you back in control of your life and your money. Le travail commence ce soir pour remplacer ce vieux gouvernement qui vous coûte plus cher et qui vous apporte moins avec un nouveau gouvernement qui vous place en premier votre chèque de paie, votre retraite, votre maison, votre pays. En nous attaquant à l'inflation, nous vous redonnerons le contrôle de votre argent et de votre vie. And it is about you. This is not my victory, it is yours, and I have so many people to thank. Merci à ceux et celles qui m'ont soutenu et qui se sont portés volontaires pour cette victoire. Merci aux autres candidats d'avoir renouvelé notre parti. Thank you to Scott Aitchison for running on ideas like simplifying and lowering taxes. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you to Roman Baber for standing up for and making sacrifices for freedom for everybody. And thank you to his wonderful partner, Nancy, for championing children with autism. Thank you. Thank you to Leslyn Lewis for standing for family, faith, and freedom. And to her husband, John, for supporting her along the way. Yes. And thank you. And thank you to Jean Charest for your service to our country. And for ensuring that we still have a country that is united in which we can call ourselves home. Thank you for fighting for Canada, Jean, when the nation's back was against the wall in the 1995 referendum. You stood with courage and passion. You defended our country, and our nation will ever be grateful for your work. Thank you. Absolutely. Ça fait à peu près 40 ans que Jean est en politique, au niveau provincial et fédéral. Et c'est dur. Mais souvent, les vrais héros, ce n'est pas les candidats, c'est leur famille. And that's why I recognize Michelle. For those 4 decades, there have been countless occasions when her husband was fighting causes on behalf of all of us, when you had to carry the extra load and take the extra sacrifice, countless invisible sacrifices. And we as a nation, we as a party, we thank you, Michelle. Merci beaucoup. To supporters of all of these fine candidates, I open my arms to you. Now, today, we are one party serving one country. Most importantly, thank you to my brilliant and beautiful wife. Merci à ma belle et brillante épouse. Pour avoir été mon ancre, mon pilier, tout au long de cette folle aventure. Tu as rendu cela possible. Tu es ma meilleure amie et l'amour de ma vie. Ah, oui. À la famille d'Anaïda qui a pris soin de nos enfants lorsque nous étions sur la route. Vous avez rendu cela possible. Muchas gracias a la familia de mi esposa y por su contribución a Canadá. So that's all the Spanish I speak. If you ever come over to our house for one of our grand family gatherings, it's usually 20 Latinos and Latinas arguing, telling jokes, telling stories in Spanish, and one guy standing around having no idea what anyone else is saying. My wife's family not only raised this incredible woman, but they came to this country from Venezuela with almost nothing. And they have since started businesses, raised kids, served in the military, and like so many immigrant families, built our country. And I want to thank, yes. I want to thank my brother Patrick, my father Don, his partner Ross, my mother Marlene, and even my biological mother Jackie is here today. Yes. We're a complicated and mixed up bunch, like most families, like our country. I want to thank my parents, though, in particular. I want to thank my parents, 2 school teachers who adopted me from a teenage mother. They taught me that it didn't matter where I came from, but where I was going. It didn't matter who I knew, but what I could do. That is the hope I want my kids to inherit. But that hope has melted into worry for many. Today, people feel like they've lost control of their pocketbooks and their lives. The cost of government is driving up the cost of living. This government, this Liberal government, has doubled our national debt, adding more debt than all previous governments combined. That means another $500 billion bidding up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest we pay. Inflationary taxes increase those costs further. Now, they plan to triple the carbon tax on gas, heat, and everything else. Le coût du gouvernement augmente le coût de la vie. Ce gouvernement a ajouté à notre dette nationale plus que tous les autres gouvernements dans l'histoire de notre pays. Ça veut dire 500 milliards de dollars qui ajoutent à l'inflation et aux augmentations des taux d'intérêt. C'est le gouvernement le plus cher dans notre histoire. It is the most expensive government in history. And the more they spend, the more things cost. The result? Families downgrade their diets to cover the 10% year-over-year jump in food prices. Seniors delay their retirements and watch their life savings evaporate with inflation. 30-year-olds who did everything we asked them to do, got degrees, worked hard, are trapped in 400 square foot apartments, or worse, their parents' basements, because house prices have doubled under this government. And those who do own homes are paying more interest on their mortgages, even though this government promised interest rates would not rise for years. Les mères monoparentales mettent de l'eau dans le lait de leurs enfants pour pouvoir se permettre la hausse de 10% de la nourriture d'une année à l'autre. Les personnes âgées voient leurs économies s'évaporer avec l'inflation. Des jeunes de 30 ans qui ont fait tout ce que nous avons demandé d'eux, obtenir un diplôme, travailler fort, vivre dans le sous-sol de leurs parents parce que les prix des maisons ont doublé. Et ceux qui ont une maison paient davantage d'intérêts pour leur hypothèque. No wonder people are worried. Most are lucky to be just getting by. Many are falling behind. And there are people in this country who are just hanging on by a thread. These are citizens of our country. We are their servants. We owe them hope. They don't need a government that sneers at them, looks down on them, calls them names. They don't need a government to run their lives. They need a government that can run a passport office. They need a prime minister who hears them and offers them hope that they can, again, afford to buy a home, a car, pay their bills, afford food, have a secure retirement, and God forbid, even achieve their dreams if they work hard. They need a prime minister who will restore that hope, and I will be that prime minister. We will rekindle the hope that people's paychecks and savings can again buy a decent life. We will make government affordable so that life is affordable. We'll cap spending and cut waste to reverse inflationary deficits and taxes. That includes axing new taxes on your paycheck, gas, heat, and other essentials. It means fighting climate change with technology and not with taxes. We will restore hope that hard work will again pay off. Do you know that today, if a single mom with 3 kids earning $55,000 a year goes out and earn another dollar, she loses 80 cents of it to taxes and clawbacks, so she can't get ahead. I will reform programs and cut taxes so that when that single mother and people like her earn more, they keep more, and hard work always pays off in this country. Nous redonnons l'espoir que le travail devienne payant de nouveau en réformant les programmes et en réduisant les impôts pour que les gens gardent l'argent qu'ils gagnent pour leur famille plutôt que de tout perdre au gouvernement. Instead of creating more cash, let's create more of what cash buys. Think of it. If you've got 10 loaves of bread and $10, well, it's $1 a loaf. If you double the number of dollars to 20, but you still have 10 loaves of bread, well, then it's $2. You see, spending more doesn't get us more. We need to make more. So instead of doubling the money, let's double the bread. Let's remove the government gatekeepers to build more homes, grow more food, and produce more energy right here in Canada. We need to restore the hope of home ownership. Right now, youth and newcomers can't get a home because local government gatekeepers block housing with heavy fees and long delays for building permits, leaving us with the fewest houses per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. A poly of government will require big cities that want federal infrastructure money to speed up and lower the cost of permits and to approve affordable housing around all transit stations so that our young people can live there and don't even need to afford a car. We'll sell off 15% of the underutilized 37,000 federal buildings to turn them into housing and use the proceeds of sale to reduce our deficit. In other words, stop printing money, start building homes for our people. Speaking of homes, we must make stuff here at home again, here in Canada. Look, trade is great. Trade is just great. But we learned during COVID that we can't count on the rest of the world to take care of us. That is why we must be the best place on earth for workers and businesses to build factories, mine critical minerals for electric cars, and develop other resources. Right now, we lose wages because we import 130,000 barrels of overseas oil, mostly from dictators, every single day, even though we have the 3rd largest supply right here in Canada. And that is all because our government prefers dirty dictator oil to responsible Canadian energy. We will repeal this government's anti-energy laws and replace them with a law that protects our environment, consults First Nations, and gets things built. We will greenlight Newfoundland and Labrador's planned increase in oil production, which will allow us to fully replace every single barrel of oil we're importing from abroad. And within 5 years, we will set the goal to end dictator oil in Canada altogether. Et au lieu d'aider Poutine à vendre son gaz naturel à l'Europe pour financer sa guerre contre l'Ukraine, un gouvernement poilièvre soutiendra des projets comme GNL Québec. Nous savons tous que les Québécois ont une source d'énergie propre, l'hydroélectricité, qu'ils peuvent utiliser pour liquéfier le gaz naturel sans émission. L'Europe a besoin d'acheter du gaz. Voici le choix. Certains préfèrent que l'argent du gaz naturel finance les armes de guerre de Poutine. Moi, je veux que cet argent-là finance les chèques de paie pour Jean-Marc Tremblay, le soudeur du Saguenay. We will greenlight mining and manufacturing of minerals like lithium, cobalt, and copper to make electric cars and batteries. We will allow for technology to be unleashed here instead of our money to go to foreign dictatorships. And that also includes repatriating food production by standing with our farmers here at home. This government's high energy taxes and proposed fertilizer cuts will only drive food production abroad to more polluting foreign jurisdictions, which would have to then burn fuel to ship, train, and truck that food back to us. But didn't we learn how irresponsible it was to rely on the rest of the world to provide us with our essentials during COVID? A Poilievre government will repeal these taxes and fertilizer mandates to get out of the way and off the backs of our farmers so that we can grow affordable food, feed our people, and be the breadbasket of the world. We will restore to First Nations more control of their land, money, and decision-making, and those communities that want to develop resources and invite commerce to fight poverty will have an ally rather than an obstacle in me. We must remove other unneeded barriers by axing the disastrous ArriveCan app. And by ending the remaining COVID vaccine mandates to let people work and travel freely. Thank you. We will bring hope. We will bring hope to doctors, nurses, engineers, and others who are immigrants to this country but are blocked from working in their professions for no other reason than that they come from another country. We'll team up with provinces to guarantee that within 60 days, an immigrant applying to work in their profession will get a yes or no based on their tested abilities, not based on where they come from. We will back up 30,000 small study loans for those in need of time off work to study up to the Canadian standard. Enough talking, remove the gatekeepers to get more doctors, more nurses, more engineers, and more inflation-proof paychecks for our brilliant immigrants. And we will restore the hope of safe streets, a hope that has turned into fear in all too many places after killings in Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, and most recently, Saskatchewan. Weakened laws allow chronic and violent reoffenders out of prison early at great danger to our people. Instead of spending a fortune targeting licensed and law-abiding, trained and tested firearms owners, Conservatives will bolster the laws, bolster the borders, and put the real criminals in jail. Et nous redonnerons de l'espoir aux Québécois afin qu'ils puissent reprendre le contrôle de leurs décisions et de leur vie, au lieu d'être contrôlés par un gouvernement centralisateur et woke à Ottawa. Vous savez, la langue française m'occupe une place toute spéciale dans mon cœur. Mon père, qui a des origines canadiennes-françaises et qui vient d'un village francescois, m'a transmis l'importance de préserver le français dès mon plus jeune âge. En grandissant à Calgary, malheureusement, j'avais trop peu d'occasions de le parler. Donc, j'ai beaucoup de travail à faire. Maintenant, je continue de perfectionner cette langue que j'aime, langue fondatrice de notre pays. Avec mon épouse, une Montréalaise, nous transmettons à notre tour à nos enfants qui vont dans les garderies francophones. Nos petits-enfants, Baby Cruz et Valentina, ils auront la langue française comme première langue. Et la deuxième langue, évidemment, espagnol Et après ça, troisième langue, l'anglais. Je vais aller plus loin en parlant du Québec. Je dirais que les conservateurs de partout au pays ont beaucoup d'apprendre des Québécois. Les Québécois défendent leur patrimoine, leur culture et leur langue. Ils ne s'excusent pas. La nation québécoise tient tête au wokisme. Mon gouvernement ne va pas se mettre le nez dans tout. Un État fédéral plus petit va faire grandir des citoyens du Québec et du Canada. Small government makes for big citizens who own their homes, build their dreams, raise their families, look out for their neighbors, and earn powerful paychecks and savings free from inflation and overtaxation. We will restore Canada's promise in a country where it doesn't matter who you love, or if your name is Smith or Singh, Martin or Mohammed, Chang or Charles. A country where the dreamer, the farmer, the worker, the entrepreneur, the survivor, the fighter, the ones who get knocked down but keep getting back up and keep going can achieve their purpose. A country where the son of a teenage mother adopted by 2 teachers can dare to run for Prime Minister of Canada. Absolutely. In the words of the great Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, I am a Canadian, a free Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship God in my own way, free to stand for what I think right, free to oppose what I believe wrong, free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all of mankind. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Well, we've just heard now from the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre. I'm going to really work on getting that. If he's the leader of the opposition.
You're saying that name a few more times.
Poilievre.
Poilievre. Okay, Pierre Poilievre, thumping, smashing win tonight. We're going to get into this. We'll go into that in a second. But we're going to just first reactions here. That we're going to go to our young new reporter, Jonathan Bradley, still working on doing a bataille correctly. But Jonathan, we're going to get first thoughts from you. Your initial reaction.
I'm kind of stunned that he won by that much. I was starting over the last few days. I was starting to think, you know what, maybe he's going to win on the first ballot. But I was thinking it was going to be tight, like 53, 54%. But to see something like 68%, that really shows the party's behind him.
It's a thundering victory. Corey, initial reaction.
He's got a very strong mandate from the members. So, I mean, unity concerns, which were my concerns, shouldn't be as much so. I mean, people can't pretend he ran away with it. They can't pretend he's not representing what the membership is. Again, now it goes on to seeing how if he can represent what Canadians at large do. But his speech, I thought was fantastic. He's on the right track.
Nigel, we were chatting just kind of the side while Poilievre was speaking. Poilievre is, 68.2%. There's been 4 leadership races in the history of the modern Conservative Party of Canada. Only 2 now have won on the first ballot. The 2 who never won an election, Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole, won way down the ballot. Scheer in particular lost 12 ballots before being declared winner on the 13th, I think it was. But now Stephen Harper, Pierre Poilievre, I could be mistaken, but I think Poilievre won an even bigger mandate than Stephen Harper did. Your impressions of what that means?
Well, I take that to mean that people are responding to certainty and to clarity. When you have got a leader elected after, what did you say? 11, 12? 12 down ballot?
Scheer lost 12 ballots before being declared leader on the 13th. And O'Toole, I don't even know if he won any ballots until the last one. Well, by points.
He won by the second ballot was when it shifted, because the first ballot was Peter MacKay was 35%, O'Toole was 33%.
Yeah.
And then it shifted after that. And it was like something like O'Toole 47%, MacKay 45%, and then on the last ballot,
So what I'm
he
saying
won.
is that when you have those kinds of compromises being made within the leadership, within the party,
Yes.
in order to put somebody at the top, you don't have a clear mandate. As Corey was saying, he has one. He can now do the things that this was actually the first campaign speech in the next election. He laid it all out there, and I'm expecting that he will stay with that program. That's what people like.
What I'm hopeful for, though, is that Poilievre includes his opponents in his cabinet. Like, I think it would be wise of him to put Leslyn Lewis in a portfolio, maybe be Attorney General and Justice Critic, because she is a lawyer. Same with Scott Aitchison. I could see him being put in a portfolio, possibly jobs and industry, because he really talked about, like, you know, the economy and taxes, things like that, maybe even finance.
I say agriculture. Let him deal with supply management.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, I've got a very interesting number here. Anthony Koch of the Poilievre campaign. I think he's the press secretary for it. He's put out a statement saying that Poilievre has won 330 of 338 constituencies in the country. So, sorry, I need that back. Sorry, someone just tried to leave our studio with something I very much need. But yeah, Mr. Poilievre has, according to his spokesman, Anthony Koch, won 330 of 38 constituencies in the country. The meaning on the final, actually, we can't say final ballot. I'm going to assume that second place runner-up, Jean Charest, probably won the other 8. But, you know, Jean Charest, Leslyn Lewis is a lot closer to Jean Charest than Jean Charest was to Pierre Poilievre. In fact, last place Scott Aitchison is closer to Jean Charest than Jean Charest was to Pierre Poilievre. See, I said both versions there. 330 of 338. Assuming that checks out, I think that says that he has won every part of the country, including Quebec, which was supposed Jean Charest had claimed was a lock, right?
Yeah, he's campaigned wisely. I think he didn't take the Western support for granted. Again, it's not a first past the post type of election or one member, one vote. And he held some appeal in every one of those. I mean, it wasn't a lost cause. You weren't diving in it. I mean, one of the things I gave Charest credit for was Calgary, Alberta was his weak spot, but he would come out and take his lumps and come out and try and get those votes out here. But it didn't really work out. Poilievre went and campaigned broadly, and obviously he appealed to people in every portion of this country, at least in the member-wise.
That actually is an astonishing statistic. That checks out 330 out of 338. Because always the knock was, well, he'll do well out in, they'll like him in Alberta, maybe BC and Saskatchewan, but you wait till they get back east. It's all going to fall apart. We had that very discussion at the very beginning. Obviously, it was not.
So I've got a tweet here from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He says, congratulations, Pierre Poilievre, on being elected leader of the Conservative Party tonight. As parliamentarians, we must work together to deliver results for people across the country. Canadians expect and deserve nothing less. Now, that's the official statement from the Prime Minister. I think we're going to probably see some different statements from his surrogates, members of the Liberal Party caucus cabinet, and then further surrogates in the media and whatnot. The framing.
Check the Gerald Butts feed.
Yeah. I would watch that. Now, I think the media and the Liberals have for some time assumed he's got it. So I think the framing began long before tonight. It's not, the Conservative equivalent was when Stéphane Dion won. The Conservatives had kind of attack ads and different messaging prepared because they didn't know who was going to win that race. That was wide open. Stéphane Dion also did not win on first ballot. He kind of came up the middle on gradual ballots. But when Michael Ignatieff won, it was expected he'd be the leader. Actually, he was effectively already the leader, the way that weird thing worked. But, it's now kind of a tradition that the main other party will begin framing their opposition pretty much the day they're elected. I think that already began, though. Would you expect anything to change now that it's official?
No, I wouldn't, because it has been so obvious for so long that Mr. Polyev was going to win. I mean, I'm sure Jonathan's view. I didn't expect it to be quite that spectacular, but nevertheless, that was the expectation. And the media are going to be going home today thinking this is great. Now we've got somebody to pick on right now until the next election, because he is different from the consensus of the responsible media. They will enjoy mocking his ideas. The thing is, the people of this country, I think, are going to really respond to his ideas. They're going to like somebody who actually talks about inflation and higher prices as a problem. They're going to like to talk about somebody who talks about lowering the gas taxes. They are going to want somebody who will say, I will put you first, rather than somebody who wants to put some airy-fairy notion of the planet first.
Absolutely, and we're seeing that. We're seeing it in polls lately at the top of it, and it seems almost just disappointment when they're reporting it in the legacy media that, well, Canadians by and large are most concerned about inflation and climate change and other issues are way down lower on that scale, and they're worried about paying the bills.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, Trudeau is saying, I don't like thinking about the economy. He's weak, and the other thing that might be interesting though is, I mean, they're going to come out guns blazing for Polyev. That's a given. The establishment's going to, the Liberals. But the Sharks are going to be circling under Justin Trudeau. Like, he is not the strongest. He certainly doesn't carry the weight that he did a few years ago. And they might be thinking their better chance is going to getting a fresh face at the head of the Liberals. And I tell you, they are ruthless political players. He's got to be sweating a little right now.
So I read that short little tweet from Justin Trudeau. I said, well, I expect surrogates to take a different tone. In fact, they already have. We've got statements now from senior Liberal, I think they're both ministers, Dominic LeBlanc and Rachel Bendayan, issuing their congratulations to Pierre Poilievre. Our country continues to rebuild from the global pandemic, and Canadians need their elected politicians to work together to make life affordable, fight climate change, strengthen our economy, and grow the middle class. Justin Trudeau and our Liberal team will continue to collaborate with all willing political parties to deliver real results for Canadians, and we hope the Conservative Party will join us in that work. At the same time, we will stand up and speak out against the reckless policies of Pierre Poilievre has been pushing since the start of his leadership campaign and during his nearly 20 years as Conservative insider. While Mr. Poilievre and the Conservative Party to promote American-style politics and try to stand in the way of our progress for Canadians will remain focused on moving Canadians forward. Well, it sure didn't take long for the surrogates to strike a remarkably different tone than the Prime Minister. But I think that this is what you would expect. The Prime Ministers should try to look, at least temporarily, a little above the fray. And then you set your minions to do the work for you.
Well, that's the classic tactic. But what they're trying to say, the next thing is they're going to say he's just like Trump. And of course, that's not.
Well, they've been saying that the whole time.
They have, and the thing is, you shouldn't conflate style and substance. If you just go through it, Mr. Poilievre supports immigration. He defends the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Trump has never talked about housing or cryptocurrency. Mr. Poilievre has talked about nothing but. Some people say, well, he's getting in front of a parade. Well, I guess old politicians do it, or they try to do it. But the difference is that Mr. Poilievre has the gift of making people understand why they are in a parade, why they're in it. And the knock is that his reporters, his supporters are angry, but he didn't create that constituency. The person who created that constituency was the one who called vast swaths of the people of Canada misogynists and racists, holding unacceptable ideas. When you talk to people like that, you bet they're going to return on you.
So I want to talk about Poilievre's speech. So we watched it there. I think pretty much everyone's with us right now watched it as well. I could have missed it because we had our odd little side chat, but I think we caught pretty much all of it. At every Poilievre rally that I was aware of, and certainly when he came to Calgary, he talked about defunding the CBC. Unless I missed it, I did not hear the CBC uttered in his speech tonight. I think this would be the first speech of his leadership campaign, if we include tonight's speech in that campaign. It would be the first speech where he does not talk about defunding the CBC. I think he did talk about freedom, but he used the term a hell of a lot less than at his rallies. At his rallies, it sounded like he was William Wallace getting ready to charge the fields of Bannockburn or something.
Yes.
So that raises the question, and this has been kind of speculated on before tonight. Is Pierre Poilievre going to pivot? So I'll put that maybe first to you, Corey. Was tonight's speech at least a bit of a pivot?
I wouldn't go as far as calling it a pivot, maybe a reprioritization. He hasn't flip-flopped or said he's ended any promises to defund the CBC or that he doesn't still back. He's just not going to hold those at the front of his speeches any longer.
But technically, like, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Aaron O'Toole claimed he was still against the carbon tax when he announced he supports a carbon
It could be
tax.
indicative.
He said, I didn't break my promise. This is just a better version of something, and it's not a tax.
Yeah, I'm just not going to read much into it. I mean, the ballots are still warm from being open in the envelope, so we'll give it a little time and see where he goes. There was only so much time in that speech, and it was long. But I mean, again, for people like us, I mean, we love taking a slap at the CBC. So we'll notice that when the state broadcaster hasn't, because we are eagerly looking forward to the defunding of that dinosaur of an institution. That would be a huge flip-flop because he's been so definitive on it. Though, again, we did see that before with a big flip-flop with O'Toole. But I think it would serve him very poorly to start turning around on it. Again, he's gotten a very strong mandate, and that means stick to what you've been doing. But he's getting to that meat and potatoes. He's got now to pivot in the sense that he's got to campaign to everybody. And you saw that. We was talking about young people trying to find their way into a housing market, other people having difficulties making the bills, the meat and potatoes stuff. And like Nigel was talking about too, another mistake we're going to see from the liberal elites, the old Laurentian elites, if they keep talking down to people, there's where they underestimated Trump. Wasn't it? You look where his support was. He was winning in rural Pennsylvania. He was winning in Ohio because it was the working people, and they were sick of the academics talking down to them. I'm not saying Poilievre is Trump-like, but I'm saying the opposition can make the same mistake when they're dealing with Poilievre. He's got a constituency, he's reaching out, and he's engaging, and they'd be very poorly served to keep shooting at him like this. They got to figure out how to reach that bunch.
So Nigel, I'm going to come to you more or less on the same thing. Every speech, unless I missed something, I don't think he gave a speech anywhere between Victoria and Gander that did not talk about defunding the CBC. And I never counted how many times he used the word freedom when I heard him speak in Calgary, but I would not be surprised if it was in the 100 range. He used the word, I think, tonight, but it was certainly at a different level than previously. Do you think this is a pivot, or, to some extent, a degree of pivot is okay if you're not actually changing what you're doing, but acknowledging you're speaking to a broader, less ideological audience when you're trying to win the Canadian public at large. It is a different kind of race. I think tonight was a change. It was a change, but he didn't contradict anything. But generally, when someone changes their positions, they don't just throw it out that openly. Would you consider tonight a pivot of at least some kind?
No, I actually don't. I think it's sort of consistent with staying on the message that you want people to understand you. He is talking about the cost of living. He is talking about young people trying to get ahead and not even being able to get started. The CBC needs to be defunded, yes. However, defunding the CBC doesn't help a struggling student pay off his loan or get his first car or his first house. Those are the things that he's going to be judged on. Go with your strengths. You got too much out there. You can't focus. And if he wins the next election, so I believe he will, but if he wins the next election, it is by talking to people about what's on their hearts, not what's on his, what's on their hearts. And I don't think that the CBC is the top of the list. No pivot, just a change of emphasis.
So I don't want this to be maybe a discussion on just the defund the CBC issue. I'm kind of using it as
Well, you didn't talk about firing the Bank of Canada governor either.
No, he did not. Although he did talk about doing it for a bit, but then he kind of de-emphasized it even during the campaign while the votes were still up for grabs. I would expect the priority of what you talk about and some of the language he uses to change. That wouldn't be unusual. Trump surprised everyone when he didn't change anything at all. Trump just ran as Trump. I know there's a famous moment when Barry Goldwater won the 1964 Republican nomination, signaling kind of the beginning of the conservative revolution in the United States. And he gave his famous speech where the famous line was, he said, "Moderation in pursuit of justice is no virtue, and extremism in pursuit of liberty is no vice." And one of the most famous U.S. broadcasters, he said he rocked back in his chair and says, "Good God, Goldwater is going to run as Goldwater." Now, notoriously, Goldwater got destroyed in 1964, but a different time, a lot of different context around it, imperfect candidate. But Trump did win as Trump. Do you think there's any danger that even if he doesn't change his positions on these things, like say he still has CBC in the platform, but it's not as high, still lots of freedom stuff, but it's not as prevalent. Is there a danger then that he kind of loses that advantage he's got right now in authenticity, that he's seen to, maybe to an extent, do what O'Toole did, which is grab the votes of the party and then just kind of ignore it and move on? I think there's less worry of that here because Poilievre has a record as more of a hardcore conservative than O'Toole perhaps did. But do you think there's a risk that if he does this a bit too much, that he risks damaging that authenticity advantage he might have right now?
Well, depends how much he does it. Of course, there's a risk. There is always a risk. But you do need to focus. You know, you're facing divisions. You don't go up against all of them at once. You pick the weak spot and you go there. So I think that he has recognized that defunding the CBC, popular though it is, tempting though it is, and necessary though it certainly is, may not be the message to put out there right now, because what people are interested in is a reduction in the gas tax.
Okay, so we're going to change gears a little bit.
You bet.
You were slagging media for talking process too much, not the issues. We're going to talk process for a second because it still matters. Just not.
You really want me to do this? Talk process?
We're going to have to talk process for a second here.
Corey, we're lost. Yes.
So before they announced, remember, before these, the pinheads said, "Now for the moment you've all been waiting for. I am going to walk away from the podium into a room and receive an envelope." And they went through a bunch of process stuff just to be official. Essentially, they were giving all the fine print on a podium. And then they came back to the podium ready to announce. And then they skipped a bunch of process stuff that was actually important. Like, what was the voter turnout? How many ballots, how many eligible voters were there versus, well, they told us eligible voters way before in the night, around 670,000. But normally you say, well, how many ballots were cast? What was the voter turnout? They didn't at all. We have no idea how many ballots were cast. It could have been theoretically 100 votes cast, or it could have been 100% of the votes cast.
Derek, give them a break. They were still traumatized by being stuck in the elevator.
Somebody probably
Yeah. So assuming you all get the reference, they came back and they said, "I'm sorry, we were delayed. We were stuck in the elevator." It was an attempt at humor, I suppose. For an auditor, I suppose it was a pretty great joke.
I think they recognized, and I can imagine the texts and the phone calls and the things, as soon as there was even clearly a delay, a problem, a hiccup, after the catastrophe of last time, there was a lot of pressure. And I think they were, okay, we've got the results. We're confident in them. Let's not drag people along further. Let's not string it. I don't need 100 more angry texts.
Yeah.
Get up there and let people know what's happening, because that's why they're here. And
yeah,
we know we're getting grumpy here. I'm sure every newsroom in the country has been getting grumpy with them when they're waiting and waiting. Is this going to be another 6-hour delay? Let's just get to the point.
Yeah, you got a bunch of newspapers set up on the press just waiting for the last story.
Insert number here, and
insert number.
Yeah. Okay, we're actually going to go to Matthew Horwood. He's on the floor of the Conservative Convention in Ottawa right now. Let's bring Matthew in. Matthew, you've got someone joining you right now. Matthew. Okay, well, Matthew is apparently going to have someone in a moment. We're going to keep Matthew on standby. But before his guest comes in, just it's normally normally the way it works is they'll announce kind of the down ballot stuff. Well, okay, so last place was Scott Atchison, 1.06% of the vote. Oh, actually, I think we've got Matthew Horwood standing by right now with, I think, looks like Andrew Scheer, the former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Okay, I'm here with Andrew Scheer, the former leader of the Conservative Party. Andrew, what are your thoughts on what just happened?
It's just incredible. I am just elated. We were quietly confident of a strong and decisive mandate, a clear result, but this blows away even my expectations. You know, the 68% of the points. I just found out over 70% of the popular vote went to Pierre. That's an incredible result, and it shows that our movement, our party, overwhelmingly endorses his message.
That's amazing. Now, you joined his campaign early on in about March. What did you see in him? Like, what made you join on? What did you like about him?
What I like about Pierre is he is consistent and he is authentic. He believes firmly in core conservative principles of free markets and individual liberty and less government interference in our lives. And he's always he's not just true to that. He's assertive about it. You know, there are a lot of conservatives who believe that you know, we have to be kind of bashful about what we believe in. And Pierre said, no, you can make the case to Canadians. You can make the case to Canadians that free market economics lift more people out of poverty than socialist policies that just redistribute wealth. You can make the case to Canadians that the world needs more clean, ethical Canadian energy, not more oil and gas from Vladimir Putin's Russia. And he's an incredible communicator. So he's authentic, he's consistent, and he's capable of taking those messages and those principles and talking to Canadians about them in a way that really makes a connection. All you have to do is look at his social media posts where he gets, you know, over a million views sometimes when he's explaining inflation or he's talking about how Trudeau's deficits led to rising prices. People respond to it because he's such a clear communicator. So that's the recipe for success in this leadership race, and I believe it's going to be the recipe for success in the general election too.
For sure. Could you give your thoughts on Jean Charest? I personally was a little bit shocked to see that Leslyn Lewis was pretty close to the amount of votes that he got. He didn't quite do as well as maybe some of us would have expected. What are your thoughts on Jean Charest?
Well, you know, I've always known Jean Charest to be a decent fellow, and he's obviously dedicated his life to Canada. You know, I really appreciated Pierre's message of thanks to Jean Charest for his role in the 1995 referendum, helping keep Canada united, fighting for a united Canada. So look, you know, obviously the membership has spoken. I respect what Jean Charest brought to the race. I respect what all the candidates brought to the race. Having been a leadership contestant myself, it's not easy. You know, all of them spent time away from their families and put themselves out there, and so I respect that. And so I'm glad we had a competitive race, and I'm glad that we had a clear result.
Yeah. There have been some people talking about whether Pierre Poilievre might have to shift his a little bit more to the left for the general election. Do you think that he will or he should do that, or do you think he should stay true to his principles, how he's been since he was in high school?
Yeah, well, I really do believe that's a narrative that comes from the government-subsidized media more than
Most likely,
else.
yes.
Yeah, no, but really, you know, a lot of people at you know, the state broadcaster, the CBC, they don't understand how people can be conservative because they're not conservative. But what I saw in this race was Pierre bringing hundreds of thousands of new people into our party. If you went to any of his events to cover them, you would see there are hundreds and hundreds of people at each one of those rallies that have never been to a political event before at all. Some of them had never even voted. And so when you're talking about winning a general election, it's not about a pivot. It's about continuing to do what's been working. He's already taken the first steps to grow our party beyond our traditional race. Our party's never had as many people in it as it has now. We've over 600,000 people have joined the Conservative Party of Canada, in large part because of Pierre Poilievre. So I just believe that we need to continue doing what we're doing. Just get the message you heard here tonight in front of as many Canadians as possible. That's the key to success. It's not about doing something differently now. It's not about pretending to be something that we're not. It's just about continuing to bring that inspiring message in front of as many Canadians as possible, and that's how we're going to win.
Yeah. Speaking of the mainstream media, there's been a lot of talk about Pierre Poilievre meeting with certain characters that the media has found to be unsavory, like Jeremy McKenzie, and a lot of op-eds I've seen about how Pierre Poilievre is kind of courting these radical conspiracy theorists in the Conservative Party. What do you make of that?
Well, there really is a desire, you know, like the government subsidized legacy media in Canada doesn't even try to hide their bias anymore, you know, and they're now trying to make Pierre responsible for like 2, 3, or even sometimes 4 degrees of separation between himself and people that he may have met. At the same time, nobody at the CBC accuses other Liberals of being racist just because they've appeared on in photos with a prime minister who's committed racist acts by putting blackface on so often that he lost count how many times he's done it. So there's a real stretch there. And I really do believe that Canadians are losing credibility in the mainstream media for that very reason. The bias has become so obvious that the media only hurts its own credibility when it tries to make those types of leaps of logic. We've got a prime minister that is divisive. We've got a prime minister that has performed racist acts. Justin Trudeau has openly questioned whether or not we should even tolerate people who disagree with him. That's nasty. That's divisive. That's where the problem is. Pierre's message is positive and unifying and brings people together and gives people the ability to make their own choices and control their own lives. That is a hopeful message for the future. And when the legacy media in this country tries to fabricate this nonsensical narrative around Pierre, it just hurts their own credibility. It doesn't hurt him.
For sure. I have a question about the vaccine mandates, getting rid of them, and ArriveCan. That got huge amount of cheers from the crowd. But what do you say to, what do you think of Canadians that are a little bit unsure, a little bit scared of going back to normal, let's say, and dropping those rules?
Well, look, Canadians are free right now to make their decisions about what they're comfortable doing and what they're comfortable not doing. And I know some people who are still concerned for their own personal health, and so they limit how often they go out and who they go out with and how big of a crowd they're comfortable being in. That's totally up to them. The beauty about what Pierre is talking about is that freedom also extends to others who are more comfortable and who are willing to get back to normal as quickly as possible. On the ArriveCan app, all our trading partners have gotten rid of their types of restrictions. This is a government that has already shown that it uses the tools that it has to collect data on Canadians. There's no reason to keep that app. There's no reason to keep the divisive mandates that have been shown more and more in the recent weeks and months to not serve any actual medical purpose. And the longer Justin Trudeau continues imposing them on Canadians, the more Canadians ask, were they ever based on science? If you're not dropping them now, when the science is saying you should, and when all our other trading partners and countries where people are flying to and from are doing the same things, then what's the justification for keeping them? So again, Trudeau's hurting his own credibility by keeping them in. But what we heard from Pierre is a clear commitment to fight those restrictions, fight the ArriveCan app and the existing mandates.
Yeah. When the next election happens, whenever that might be, what do you think the strategy should be for Pierre Poilievre? Are there any certain, let's say, techniques, or do you think he should just stick to what he's been doing and continue on speaking how he's spoken?
Yeah, I do believe that's the secret. It's not a secret. I'll share
Open
the
secret.
Yeah, I'll share the secret. The secret strategy to winning the next election is just keep doing more of the same. He's won every province. I just found out before I started chatting with you that he won every province in Quebec except for 6.
Mm-hmm.
So he's strong everywhere. He's got a strong result everywhere. Our supporters of our movement in every corner of the country are supporting him. So it's not like he's got a vulnerability in terms of his race, of his campaign, and so we just need to keep doing more of the same. We just need to get that awesome, inspiring, positive message in front of more and more Canadians.
Mm-hmm. And last thing here is generally on the issues of inflation, supply chain issues. Do you have any suggestions for how he should handle that, or what his policy should be?
Well, Pierre was the first one to raise the alarm on inflation when I was still leader and Bill Murno was still the finance minister, and the Bank of Canada announced that it was going to purchase $5 billion of government bonds every week. We recognized that was going to lead to awful consequences, and Pierre was up in the House of Commons frequently. He started to raise the alarm bells. He had the governor of the Bank of Canada at Finance Committee, and he would ask these types of questions. And the establishment media and the people with fancy titles at the Bank of Canada all dismissed it. Remember, the Bank of Canada was predicting that we would experience deflation, if you can believe it. So Pierre has an incredible gift at taking, concepts like monetary policy, which may not be, instantly obvious to everyday Canadians. and he's able to communicate in a way that really resonates. You know, he's had a lot of engagement with his videos, with his speeches, with his op-eds and things like that, explaining how massive deficits lead to inflation. And so that's the solution. You know, the solution is to get those deficits under control, get back to balanced budgets. And he's already had tremendous success raising the alarm bell on it, and now we just need to make sure that we continue doing that with offering the solution, which is getting government spending under control and getting a governor at the Bank of Canada that understands that if you print money to buy government debt, when the economy is not producing more, you wind up with inflation. More dollars chasing fewer goods equal higher prices. That is a basic concept that a governor at the Bank of Canada should understand, and Pierre's going to make sure that the next governor of the Bank of Canada does understand that.
For sure. And last question really quickly. Would you say that you're more confident about the party than you were in 2021 under Aaron O'Toole?
Well, I try not to look at the past. We're coming off a leadership election where everybody could speculate about why the party wasn't successful in the last few elections. What Pierre's done tonight is spell out a roadmap for the job ahead. And that's what we're all focused on now. So I'm incredibly confident, incredibly optimistic. Canadians are just coming out of 2 years of division, 2 years of the Prime Minister imposing restrictions and imposing things like vaccine mandates, and not just disagreeing with people who hold a different view, but really insulting them and almost acting like basically saying that they're un-Canadian to hold a different view. People are tired of that. You know, Canadians are used to having different opinions. What we haven't seen until Justin Trudeau is that level of division, really demonizing people for holding a different view. And I believe Canadians are ready to reject that and embrace a positive, unifying message of more freedom, less government interference in our lives.
For sure. All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. Much appreciated.
Appreciate it.
Well, there you have it. Very confident that Pierre Poilievre is the man to beat, and that is the general vibe we've been picking up here tonight. People are extremely happy to see him on the stage, and he got a huge amount of cheers, especially when he talked about getting rid of ArriveCan and vaccine mandates. So it's looking like the party is extremely unified. We saw it was way over 50% of the vote went to Pierre Poilievre, and it's going to be an interesting next election, that's for sure.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Matthew, and your updates from the floor of the convention in there in Ottawa. Okay, well, so that was former Conservative leader Andrew Scheer. He says that Poilievre got more than 70% of the popular vote. That would contrast with 68% of the points. So actually pretty close. But as I think we kind of predicted, he would slightly underperform in the points vis-a-vis percentage. But when you win that big, it should actually pretty closely net out, which it did. So we've got a statement from Jean Charest, actually. I don't know if you've got it handy there.
I still don't have it handy. I just saw it on Twitter there while things were going. But very gracious and again saying that time to look forward, no internal divisions, no more internal attacks. It was, and I didn't expect anything otherwise from Charest. He's always been dignified, even if the campaign got a little bit heated. But still, you do want to watch for that. You never know. And you don't want to see a candidate stomping out and saying, go piss up a rope and leaving it with things divided. So it was good to see.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk, well, actually, during this interview, I got a message from our news editor, Dave Naylor. He's in the newsroom, actually, over there right now, hammering things out. And he says, Deputy PM Andrew Scheer, you heard it here first. Now, I don't know if he meant that to be private to me or not, but Dave is on the record now, one way or another, predicting that Andrew Scheer is probably going to play a big role in Poilievre's front bench.
Well, he should. I mean, one thing that most people forget is that no Conservative leader has won more votes than Andrew Scheer. In the election that he contested, he pulled in 6.2 million votes. Mr. Harper at his best never got that. So he is a much more popular man than his reputation would suggest.
Okay, so we're going to go see who was right and wrong here. Our office pool. It's here. We've been talking about it for months.
Started in March, eh?
Started March 9th. the three of us, so myself, Dave Naylor, Corey, we were on March 9th. James Finkbeiner, our Vice President of Operations, who a lot of you don't see. He's, more on the operations side of the Standard. But a big part of the team here, just on the 10th, he put his in. Then we had a number of others who came in later on the pool. I was quite confident of victory tonight. I got the order right, and I got the vote pretty close, 60% on first ballot. I was going to say, in my defense, that was March 9th before other people had done it. But you, Corey, on the same day had yours in. And you predicted the same order as I had, but you said 64%, which got you the closest, which means you win. The other big winner tonight is Corey Morgan, wins the office pool. So Corey Morgan, guy who doesn't drink, is now owed. So just so you know, James is in the back playing with our system. I saw James has demanded honorable mention. James was actually the closest in predicting the first ballot was 70%. Oliver Polyev got 68.2, I think. James was closest in percentage with 70. But unfortunately for this rube, he got every other part of it wrong. He predicted second place would be Leslyn Lewis. Third place, Patrick Brown, didn't even rank. And fourth place, Jean Charest. Fifth place, Roman Baber. He didn't get a single one right after that. So he thinks he should get honorable mention. I'm not sure. He got part of it right. But the real thing here is that I was looking forward to this. Oktoberfest is coming up. I was looking forward to all of these 6-packs of beer coming to me. I got expensive German beer tastes. And the guy who doesn't even drink is now owed a 6-pack by everybody at the Western Standard. Corey, are you back off the wagon?
No, I fear for the sake of everybody around here, I'm still going to remain dry. As you can see, as uncontrolled and prone to assholery as I am now, you haven't really seen me at the height of my drinking. So I'll just take the honorary win and appreciate that. And some Diet Pepsi and some pizza later or something. All right.
Okay.
We're in.
Well, also a gracious winner tonight. I will be a less gracious loser. I was really looking forward to demanding, some Lovenbrow from you guys, break the bank from all of our employees to pay the boss with beer. Didn't quite pan out for me.
We still got the UCP race.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
That's true. It's true. I'm going to make a comeback there. Okay. Well, Nigel, Corey, thank you very much. You've been extremely insightful tonight. Also, thank you to Jonathan Bradley, a reporter here in our Calgary headquarters, news editor Dave Naylor, who is still working furiously, refusing to eat. He's being tube-fed at the moment. And Matthew Horwood, our parliamentary bureau chief in Ottawa, who's been on the ground floor of the convention there, providing us live coverage. And very importantly to all of you, if you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, you should be. As you heard from Andrew Scheer, the government-subsidized and the government-owned media are going to give you a very different picture of tonight as far as they're concerned. The Reichstag fire decree has just been passed. Democracy is threatened. We're not partisans here, but we've got a very different, very Western take on things. If you support independent, bailout-free media, you need to be a member of the Western Standard. Go to westernstandard.news and click on membership. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year for bailout-free, independent Western media. Very thankful to all of you who have joined us here tonight. We're very grateful for the comments. Some of them insightful, some of them less so. But either way, we're grateful for you all nonetheless. Thank you very much. God save the Queen and
the King.
God save Alberta.
God save the King.
I'm not saying it. Not saying it. Good night.
Good night.